I mean, he's a great provider, but there's just no passion anymore. I stopped mid-chew. Her voice wasn't raised. It was worse. It was performative, smooth, rehearsed, laced with that kind of mock sympathy women reserve for one another when they're pretending to be trapped in marriages they chose. And the worst part? The punchline was me. 3 seats away at that pristine country club table, nestled between the overpriced floral centerpieces and the endless mimosas, my wife. The woman I'd spent 23 years protecting, providing for, and putting first, had just downgraded me to a walking ATM with a dead spark plug. And her friends? The Botox Brigade? They laughed. Not shocked laughs. Not nervous ones. But gleeful, indulgent giggles that came from the gut, like she'd said something deliciously scandalous. Listen, quick break. We set a goal to hit 10K subscribers. So tap subscribe if you're liking these wild stories of betrayal. Now let's get back to the madness. I kept my eyes on my plate. A chilled crab salad. No seasoning. Just like our marriage, apparently. No passion. She even did the finger quotes when she said it. There it was. The kill shot. Not screamed in a fight. Not confessed in a therapy session. Not whispered in a moment of vulnerability. No, she threw it out like a piece of gossip, a juicy tidbit to make herself feel edgy in a room full of bored housewives. You know what the funniest part was? She begged me to come to this damn luncheon. Said I was too distant lately. Said she wanted to reconnect. She kissed me on the cheek this morning, routine, absent, like feeding the dog, and asked me to wear my navy blazer. The one that made me look distinguished. I obliged, even though I hated that thing. Felt like armor I didn't ask for. I sat through 40 minutes of mind-numbing conversations about spa renovations, conscious uncoupling, and one woman's emotional support turtle. I nodded. I smiled. I even offered to take the group picture. And this was my reward. I wiped my mouth with a napkin, folded it carefully, and placed it on the table like I was finishing a business meeting. Then I pulled out my wallet and paid the bill before the server could even think about splitting it 6 ways. Not because I was being gracious, but because I wanted the silence that follows a power move. I wanted them to feel the vacuum as I stood up and didn't say a single word. She didn't even notice I was gone until I passed behind her chair. And even then, she kept laughing. Nervous now, maybe sensing something off. But she didn't stop me. She never did. I walked through the clubhouse like a ghost. Familiar halls, polished wood, framed photographs of men shaking hands over golf scores that didn't matter. The valet attendant caught my eye and straightened up. Then came the real moment. The black Jaguar pulled up, slow and sleek, like it knew the timing had to be cinematic. And behind the wheel, Elise, late 30s, aviators, confident hands on the steering wheel like she owned the road, and a knowing smirk that said she knew the role she was about to play. She didn't look at me like I was a sad husband running away. She looked at me like I was a man finally waking the hell up. I got in, quietly. No slamming doors. No final glances over the shoulder. Just a calm, collected slide into leather seats that didn't smell like disappointment. We drove off with nothing but the low hum of a tuned engine and the distant sound of laughter echoing behind us. It wasn't rage I felt. It was clarity. You don't always need to yell when you're leaving someone behind. Sometimes, silence is the loudest message of all. The first night, I checked into a corporate suite on the 22nd floor of a building downtown. Marble lobby, quiet elevators, no personal history. The kind of place where men go when they've finally admitted to themselves that the house they spent their lives paying off was never really theirs. I didn't bring much. Just a duffel bag with a change of clothes, my shaving kit, and the folder. Ah yes, the folder. Thick, gray, unlabeled. It had been in my home office drawer for 5 years. I used to call it my nuclear option in my head, back when I thought I'd never actually need it. A running log of every financial asset with my name on it. Every LLC I'd quietly opened. Every paper trail she'd never bothered to trace. Not revenge. Contingency. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone vibrating in my coat pocket. 10 missed calls. 3 voicemails. 1 text. Where are you? Are you okay? I stared at it like it was written in a language I no longer understood. The words weren't questions. They were control mechanisms. Softened commands. She didn't want to know if I was okay. She wanted to know if I was available. I didn't reply. The next morning, I put on a suit I hadn't worn in years, tailored navy with sharp shoulders, and walked into my office like a man with nothing left to lose. I wasn't fired. I wasn't scolded. I asked for a 6-month sabbatical, and they gave it to me before I finished the sentence. That's the thing about being quiet and reliable for 20 years. People assume you'll always be there. Until you're not. By noon, my work email was disabled, my calendar cleared, and my assistant sent a card saying, "Enjoy your rest." She had no idea. What followed wasn't rest. It was reinvention. I hired a personal trainer named Vic, former Marine. Neck like a tree trunk. He didn't talk much, which suited me fine. First thing he did was toss my orthopedic sneakers into a donation bin and tell me to stop walking like my back owed the world something. "Square up," he said. "You look like a man who's been apologizing too long." He wasn't wrong. Next came the wardrobe. Not flashy, just intentional. Trimmed shirts, leather belts that didn't sag, shoes that said, "I still have places to go." I stopped going to the same barber I'd been seeing since '03. Found a stylist instead. She gave me a cut that took 10 years off my face and said, "Your wife's gonna flip." I didn't correct her. Let her think what she wanted. Each day, I woke at 5. Worked out. Read. Ate clean. Pushed my body until the ache in my shoulders matched the bitterness I'd been carrying in my chest for too long. And yet, beneath every controlled breath and every drop of sweat, something else stirred. Something coiled. Not rage. That's too simple. It was colder than rage. More surgical. I wasn't just moving on. I was building something. Every text she sent after the second day went unanswered. I could feel her shift, her tone wobbling from indignation to concern to panic. She wasn't used to silence from me. I was always the one who caved. Always the one who smoothed things over. But this time, there was no smoothing. Because this time, the man she described as no passion had found something better than passion. Precision. And precision is quiet, right up until it isn't. There's a specific type of silence in a marriage that doesn't announce itself. It just creeps in like humidity, coating everything until you don't remember what it felt like to breathe dry air. I used to wake up with grease under my fingernails. Not from neglect, but from love. From weekends under the hood of my '67 Shelby Cobra, that deep blue demon I'd rescued from a junkyard in college and rebuilt bolt by bolt in my 20s. Before diapers. Before mortgages. Before she started leaving magazines open to 10 ways to fix your boring husband. Back then, I used to race. Nothing professional, just local circuits, late-night drag runs out near Harper Ridge. I was damn good, too. Quick hands. Calculated risk. When I drove, I felt everything. Every vibration. Every shift. I told her, the first time I let her in the passenger seat, "This is the only place I don't think about tomorrow." She laughed and kissed my cheek. Said it was sexy. Said I was fearless. But babies have a way of turning gas pedals into guilt triggers. When our daughter was born, I sold the Cobra. Listed it below market because we needed the money faster than pride could afford. And when she wanted to open her boutique, I didn't hesitate. Took the check straight to the bank. Signed the papers. Smiled as she cut the ribbon in her overpriced heels. Told myself this was what men did when they loved deeply. They step back so someone else can shine. And I did. Over and over again. Every dream I'd parked. Every late-night job I took to cover shortfalls. Every social event I skipped so she could network, I did with a quiet nod. I was the man who stood in the shadows of her spotlight, making sure the lights never flickered. I cooked. I cleaned. I built shelves for her store displays with my bare hands. I never asked for credit. Never wanted applause. Just respect. Hell, I even remember the night she told me I was too good. It was our 15th anniversary. We were sitting on the patio, a bottle of wine between us, the kind she insisted we could finally afford now that her business was stable. She looked at me and said, "You're like, safe. Almost too safe. I don't know what I'd do without you." I should have heard the foreshadowing in that. Because what she really meant was, I don't know what to do with you anymore. Over the years, I became part of the furniture. The dependable husband with the calm voice and practical shoes. The man who fixed faucets and kept the freezer stocked but apparently forgot how to thrill. She went to yoga retreats, book clubs, spiritual brunches, always searching for something more. Something wild. Something not me. I never cheated. Not once. Even when the opportunities were there, colleagues who leaned too close, Old flames who resurfaced with flirty nostalgia. I shut it down every time. Loyalty wasn't a burden to me. It was default mode. And for that, for every sacrifice made quietly, for every dream bartered for comfort, I was rewarded with a punchline at a lunch table. No passion. She forgot who I was because she no longer had to see me clearly. And now? Now she wouldn't see me at all. But she'd feel it. Because the past she forgot was coming back. And this time, it wasn't parking itself in the background. Elise pulled up outside the loft in that same black Jaguar, the one with the V8 growl and the cracked leather seats that smelled like history and gasoline. She didn't text, didn't honk, just waited, calm, like someone who understood that silence wasn't awkward, it was earned. She stepped out in work boots and a denim jacket, wiping grease off her hands with a rag older than some of my coworkers. Her hair was pulled back, streaked with silver like it was defying age instead of hiding from it. She walked over, held out a coffee and said, "You still know how to rebuild a gearbox, or did that die with your hairline?" I laughed. Actually laughed. Not the fake chuckle I gave at wine tastings or boutique launches. A real one. The kind that came from somewhere lower than the lungs. We hadn't seen each other in over a decade, not since the funeral. Her brother, my best friend, had passed in a car wreck that should have taken both of us, but didn't. We drifted after that, like people do when grief takes opposite turns. But Elise? She had never really left that world. She stayed in it, rebuilding what others discarded, restoring what was left for scrap. That morning, she handed me a key and said, "I've got a '72 Maserati Indy that's being held together by optimism and duct tape. It needs a second brain. Thought of you." I followed her to the garage. Not a sleek, air-conditioned showroom. This place was raw. Concrete floor. Wall calendars with pin-up girls from 20 years ago. Tools everywhere, but arranged with purpose. Not chaos. Controlled madness. It reminded me of the garage I used to have before it became a storage unit for her boutique's overflow inventory and forgotten yoga mats. The Maserati was a mess. Rusted trim, busted suspension, engine block stripped down to bones. It looked like hell, and I fell in love on sight. For the next 4 weeks, that garage became my cathedral. We didn't talk about feelings. We talked about torque ratios and brake calipers, about vinyl interiors and sourcing authentic emblems. The kind of conversations that don't sound like therapy but feel like it anyway. Elise didn't ask why I disappeared from suburbia. She didn't prod when I flinched at phone vibrations. She just handed me wrenches, made strong coffee, and played records that sounded like rebellion on vinyl. At one point, I was lying under the frame, oil streaked across my jaw, when she slid under next to me and whispered, "You still have that calm, that control, like nothing rattles you." I turned to look at her. Her face was inches from mine, eyes sharp, mouth soft. I almost told her then. Told her about the luncheon. About the phrase, "no passion." About the empty house and the silence that wasn't peaceful, it was nuclear. But I didn't. Not because I was hiding, but because for once, I didn't want to lead with pain. I wanted to see if I could build something, anything, that wasn't born out of anger. So I kissed her. Just once. Not hungry. Not desperate. Just enough to say, this part of me still exists. We didn't call it anything. She didn't ask for a label. And I didn't offer one. But something had shifted. She wasn't an affair. She wasn't a revenge body. She was a callback to the man I used to be before I shrank to fit inside someone else's ambition. And as the Maserati slowly came back to life under our hands, I started to feel something I hadn't in years. Instinct. That quiet fire in the chest that doesn't need applause. The one that hums under the ribs and says, "Keep going." But I hadn't told her everything. And I knew, eventually, I'd have to. It started small. A neighbor waved, smiled, then didn't stop to chat. Just kept walking, pretending to scroll through their phone. The mailman asked, casually, "Everything all right with Mr. Belling?" as he handed over a stack of catalogs and a jury duty notice. She forced a smile, said, "Oh, he's just traveling for work," but her voice cracked halfway through traveling. That was the first week. By the second, the cracks began to spread like hairline fractures in glass. The kind you only notice when the sunlight hits just right, and by then, the whole damn thing's about to shatter. Her morning walks felt lonelier. Not because fewer people were around, but because they were avoiding her. Her friend group, the same one that clinked mimosas and laughed at her provider but no passion joke, started replying slower. Brunch invites dried up. One even canceled a standing tennis game, citing a flare-up in her shoulder that everyone knew was complete bull. It didn't take long for the whispers to work their way back. What happened at the club? Did she really say that about him? Have you seen Mark's car lately? She tried calling me 17 times in one weekend. No voicemail. Just a ring, a breath, and silence. By Monday, the call stopped. Not because she gave up, but because she knew something was shifting, and she didn't know how to name it yet. That night, she called our son. Now, let's be clear, he's 30. Married. 2 kids. Mortgage of his own. He grew up watching me hold the house together. Saw every moment I stayed calm while the chaos danced around me. She tried to sound breezy on the phone. Hey, honey. Just wondering, have you heard from your father? He paused, long enough to make her stomach turn. Yeah, he said. He texted me. Oh, good. What did he say? 2 words, he replied. I'm fine. That was it. No explanation. No follow-up. Just the same man I'd always been, concise, steady, maddeningly unreadable when I wanted to be. That night, she walked into my home office, our home office, as she always insisted, and something must have felt off before she even turned on the light. The shelves were still full. Paperwork neatly stacked. Nothing looked disturbed. But it wasn't what was there. It was what was missing. Above the desk, where a black and white photo of our wedding had always hung, there was now just a pale rectangle of unstained paint. The kind that only comes from years of sun exposure bleaching everything else around it. She stared at it like it had slapped her. It hadn't been removed violently. No broken frame. No shrapnel of glass. Just gone. Clean. Surgical. That was the moment the panic became something more dangerous. Not because I'd taken something, but because she finally realized I hadn't left in a storm. I'd left like a surgeon. And surgeons don't make mistakes. They plan. The maitre d' greeted her with a warmth that felt practiced, too polished, too impersonal. He pulled out her chair, offered her a wine list she barely looked at, and gestured toward the candlelit corner table she had specifically requested. The same one they'd sat at the year they hit 10 years married. Back then, he brought her flowers. Back then, she wore the same red dress, and meant it when she leaned across the table and whispered, "We made it." Now, she sat alone, in that same dress. Only this time, it clung tighter in the wrong places, and the look in her eyes wasn't anticipation. It was calculation trying to pass as hope. She'd sent the reservation confirmation to my old email the night before. No subject line, no message, just a screenshot that said, 7:30 p.m. Our spot. She hadn't spoken to me in over 3 weeks. Not since the last unanswered call. But she still believed, hoped, that maybe nostalgia was a stronger glue than truth. The waiter brought water. She didn't touch it. The second glass of wine went untouched too, though she ordered it out of habit. Then, at precisely 7:42, a tall man in a dark vest approached the table with a small envelope on a silver tray. She blinked. He offered a quiet, "Mr. Belling asked that I deliver this to you personally." The air left her lungs in a slow exhale. She took the envelope with hesitant fingers, already too aware that whatever was inside wouldn't feel like an olive branch. It was light. Just 2 sheets inside. No perfume. No handwritten flourish. Just printed text. The letter read, "You said there was no passion. You were right. But it wasn't mine that was missing. There was no signature. No sincerely. No closure. Just that single punch of clarity." And then she pulled out the second page. First, a photo. Inkjet printed, grainy but unmistakable. Me, laughing beside a gleaming deep green Maserati, leaning on the hood with Elise, her head tilted back, mouth open mid-laugh, my hand resting on her waist. I hadn't looked that alive in years. Maybe ever. But it wasn't the photo that did it. It was what came behind it. A copy of the original cashier's check made out to Lorette's boutique. 26,000 even. Paid in full. My name on the line. Dated 3 months before her grand opening. She had told that story 100 times. How she'd saved for years. How she scrimped and believed in herself. Her whole brand was built around female independence and building from nothing. She'd buried the origin story because it didn't photograph well. Because I didn't photograph well. But now the truth sat quietly between the breadbasket and the flickering votive candle. as brutal and clean as a scalpel. She folded everything back into the envelope with hands that trembled just slightly, smiled at the waiter when he returned to ask if she'd like to order. "No," she said, voice clipped. "Not tonight." She stood up slowly, tucked the envelope under her arm, and walked out, heels echoing against the marble tile. No crying, no scene, just silence. But as she crossed the restaurant floor, every woman in red who glanced her way saw something else now. Not elegance, not mystery, but loss. Because the man she thought would always be waiting hadn't just walked away. He had moved on. And worse, he looked happy. At first, she told herself it was seasonal. Retail always dips in late spring, right? Too warm for coats, too soon for sandals. A lull. Normal. She repeated that line like a prayer, even as her assistant quietly mentioned they were 3 weeks behind on 2 supplier payments. Even as the new marketing intern brought up, tentatively, that their engagement on social media had nosedived. Even as the floral arrangement deliveries, the ones Mark had quietly paid for each week to keep the boutique smelling like success, stopped showing up altogether. Still, she held the line. It's just a slump. Until the call stopped. Not from customers, but from the women who once claimed they couldn't make it through Fashion Week without Laurette's guidance. They used to text her selfies in the dressing room, ask her to curate entire wardrobes for benefit dinners and birthday trips. These weren't clients. They were disciples. And now? Now they weren't even answering her follow-ups. The worst came when her assistant forwarded an email from one of their long-standing VIP clients, Pamela Gregory, CEO of an interior design firm with 5 homes and a pathological need to color code everything. The message was polite. Chilly. Said she'd be restructuring future engagements. Translation: I'm done with you. Pamela had met her through Mark, a golf luncheon years ago. He'd introduced them, complimented her taste, and made the sale without touching a single hanger. She tried calling Pamela directly. It rang twice, then voicemail. She texted, "Everything okay? Let's grab lunch soon." No reply. At the following Saturday's gala, a hospital benefit she normally co-chaired, but had only been invited to this time, she wore her backup dress. The main one hadn't been picked up from the tailor because she'd forgotten the final payment. She smiled her way through the room, kissed cheeks, faked laughter, until she found herself alone by the bar with a woman she hadn't seen in months, Amanda Keene, another boutique owner. Slightly older, sharper eyes. Amanda swirled her wine and said, softly, "You know, if you're going to talk about your husband like that, you better make damn sure the world isn't listening." The words hit harder than the wine. Laurette blinked. "Excuse me." Amanda didn't raise her voice, didn't gloat, just shrugged. "You humiliated a man half the city respected. What did you think would happen? That they'd just clap for your little performance?" Before she could respond, Amanda turned and walked away, leaving her standing there with her drink trembling in her hand like it weighed more than glass should. She left early. No one tried to stop her. The Uber ride home was quiet, the kind that stretches on forever even when it's only 12 minutes. When she opened the front door, dark house, unwatered plants, and one of Mark's old cardigans still hanging where she'd left it, something buckled. She sat down on the stairs. No wine, no drama, no audience, just absence. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through his number, hit call, voicemail. She tried to keep her voice steady, like the tremble wasn't crawling up her throat. "Mark, hey, it's me. I, just wanted to talk. About us. I think we should talk. Please." She paused, swallowed. "I miss you." Click. She sat there for an hour after. Nothing came back. No text. No email. No knock on the door. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the slow, sickening realization. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't a phase. This was erosion. And it had already started long before she noticed. The knock came at 9:13 a.m. She was in the kitchen, staring into a half-drunk cup of coffee that had gone cold. She hadn't slept the night before. Not really. Just dozed between thoughts, each one darker than the last. The man at the door wore a gray vest and mirrored sunglasses. No smile. No small talk. Just a clipboard and a brown envelope with her name printed cleanly across the front. "Laurette Belling?" "Yes," she said, squinting into the sun. "Signature here, please." She signed, hand shaking more than she wanted to admit. When the door clicked shut, she carried the envelope into the dining room like it might explode. Sat down, peeled the seal. There was no note, no card, just a series of stapled legal documents, each printed with icy precision. Letterhead from a law firm in the city she didn't recognize. The first page was titled, Notice of Separation of Business Holdings. She frowned, flipped the page. The boutique, her boutique, was now listed as a wholly independent entity. The record showed its founding funds, its original transfer deed, and the quiet restructuring that had taken place over the past 6 weeks. Mark had formally removed himself as a financial guarantor. He no longer co-signed anything, no longer owed anything, no longer backed anything. It was hers, completely, which meant every debt, every late invoice, every pending supplier lawsuit was now hers, too. She turned the page. The second document was a formal termination of joint banking privileges. Every account, checking, savings, lines of credit had been severed. Each now bore the designation individual. Her name no longer appeared on any of Mark's assets, not even the damn Costco membership. She scrambled for her wallet, yanked out her Visa, the one they'd shared for over 20 years. Gold, with his name embossed first. Tried to log into the shared app. Access denied. She refreshed. Again. Nothing. Her hands went clammy. She reached for her phone, opened the boutique supplier portal, and checked the payment method on file. Declined. She blinked, as if staring at it longer would reverse it. This is a bluff, she muttered. Louder this time. He's bluffing. But her voice didn't carry weight anymore. It just floated there, weak and defensive, like an old curtain caught in a draft. She tried calling the bank. Sorry, ma'am. Your name no longer appears on the account. We can't disclose that information. Click. She dropped the phone. Anger surged. She stood, pacing now. This isn't how it works. He can't unplug me like this. But he had. Cleanly. Quietly. Without warning. And that's what terrified her the most. There was no yelling. No threats. No dramatic courtroom scene with raised voices and slammed gavels. Just paperwork. Signed. Filed. Done. Because men like Mark don't throw tantrums. They flip switches. And when they do it right, you don't even see the lights go out until you're standing in the dark, alone, holding an envelope that tells you exactly how replaceable you really were. The envelope arrived on creamy cardstock, hand-delivered by a driver in a charcoal suit and gloves like some relic from another era. There was no return address. Just her name, written in delicate cursive, and a wax seal stamped into the flap. An actual seal, like something out of a Victorian drama. She hesitated before opening it. But curiosity is a cruel kind of hunger. Inside, an invitation. Elegant. Minimal. You are cordially invited to the Autumn Grace Foundation Gala and Silent Auction. Friday, 7 p.m. Belvedere Hall. Beneath the elegant typeface, her eyes stopped on one line. Guest speaker, Mark Belling, entrepreneur and philanthropist. Her breath caught. The world tilted, just slightly. He never did public speaking. He hated crowds. Said the sound of clapping made his skin crawl. But there he was, front and center. She read the line 3 more times, then again later that night, after pacing the hallway barefoot with a glass of wine in one hand and the envelope in the other like a talisman. She didn't RSVP. Didn't have to. People like her don't RSVP. They simply appear. And appear she did. The night of the event, she arrived in a crimson gown that was clearly tailored last minute, slightly too tight in the ribs, but dramatic enough to make a statement. Her hair was pinned to perfection. Her heels clicked like punctuation marks across the marble entryway. Inside, the place was every bit the kind of venue where Mark used to trail behind her, hands in his pockets, quietly signing checks to cover sponsorships she claimed were investments in their future. Now, everyone was buzzing. About the Maserati on display at the auction. About the anonymous donor funding new scholarships. About the man who'd transformed a once-forgotten charity into a centerpiece of the season. Then the lights dimmed. A hush swept over the room. She turned toward the stage. And there he was. Mark. Standing tall, posture straight. Not a trace of the man who used to slump into couches with a sigh and say, "Let's just get through this." He wore a midnight black tux, open collar, no tie. Beside him, Elise, Cool, effortless, graceful in a way that didn't beg for attention. Her hand rested lightly on his arm. They looked anchored, a pair, not clinging, not trying, just there. The MC welcomed the crowd, then handed Mark the mic. He didn't clear his throat, didn't look at notes, just spoke. Good evening. I'm Mark Belling. For over 2 decades, I poured myself into building things for other people, businesses, homes, dreams. And for a long time, I told myself that was enough. A ripple of recognition moved through the crowd. Eyes turned toward her, some subtly, others brazenly. She didn't move. But sometimes, he continued, you wake up and realize you weren't building a life. You were building a holding cell, one where you existed quietly while someone else curated your worth. He glanced out, scanning the room. Their eyes met. There it was. No smirk, no triumph, just calm, still, measured, devastating. He went on. And when you finally walk away, people think you must have gone mad. They don't realize that sometimes the most rational thing in the world is to stop apologizing for your own fire. Behind him, a screen lit up with a slideshow, photos of the Maserati restoration. Him and Elise working under the hood. Grease-streaked smiles. Laughter in motion. There were no couple shots. No kissing. No hand-holding. Just a man alive. He closed simply. Betrayal doesn't always look like violence. Sometimes it's the sound of laughter behind your back. Sometimes it's silence at the dinner table. And sometimes it's being told you're safe, when what they really mean is forgettable. Applause thundered. She didn't clap. Couldn't. Because for the first time, it hit her. This wasn't about a mistress. It wasn't about Elise. Or the car. Or the money. It was about the fury she never heard coming. The kind that doesn't scream. It calculates. And waits. The night air outside Belvedere Hall was thick with perfume, humidity, and the low murmur of post-gala chatter. Laughter trickled like background music, delicate and superficial, as donors mingled beneath string lights and clinked glasses of overpriced champagne. The valet line glowed under soft lanterns. Cars pulled in, one after another, Teslas, Porsches, the occasional vintage Jaguar for effect. But the crowd didn't turn for those. They turned when they saw him. Mark stepped out from the marble steps with Elise beside him, her hand resting casually in the crook of his arm, her posture as unbothered as his. He wasn't rushing, wasn't dodging, just existing in full. No longer a man walking behind a woman's shadow. No longer apologizing for how quiet he'd once been. She saw them from across the circle. Her red gown now felt like armor 2 sizes too small, too loud in a night built on understatement. She stood frozen for a second, then instinct took over. Mark, wait, she called out, breaking the invisible barrier between guest and ex-wife. He turned his head slowly, not startled, not annoyed, just that same infuriating, impossible stillness that had once made her feel safe and now made her feel irrelevant. She stepped closer. A few guests nearby quieted their conversations to listen. Her voice cracked, just barely, as she said, I never meant it like that. And for the first time, truly, he looked at her. Not with hatred, not even with pain, just calm clarity. No, he said, you meant it exactly like that. A pause, long enough for her to feel the weight of her own words boomerang back and hit her in the chest. He held her gaze for one final second, then broke it, turned, opened the passenger side door of the silver sports car for Elise with a small, intentional nod. She stepped in, not rushed, not smug, just secure. He rounded the car and settled behind the wheel. The Maserati purred to life with the kind of low, sensual rumble that only came from something built by hands that loved what they touched. As the car rolled forward under the soft lights, she stood there, alone, unmoving. Her expression froze, not because of who was beside him, not even because of the machine carrying them away, but because of the peace on his face. That steady, impossible stillness. That contentment. That unmistakable flicker of passion she once claimed didn't exist in him. And now, standing under a sky filled with stars that no longer cared to shine for her, she realized the truth. It had always been there. She just never bothered to see it. And now, it was gone. She showed up wearing the same shade of lipstick she wore on their 3rd anniversary, The one Dean once said reminded him of cherries in summer. Only now, it didn't look like summer. It looked like war paint. I sat there with my jacket still buttoned, napkin unfolded on my lap, wondering if maybe this was the part where she'd pretend to notice me. A smile. A kiss on the cheek. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was hell. But instead, Rachel slid into the booth like it was a dentist appointment, not our anniversary dinner. She didn't even take off her coat. No eye contact. Just a dry, hey, before picking up the wine list like I wasn't even there. 25 minutes late. Not because of traffic. I checked. She'd been at the Marriott across town. I know because I'd already driven past it earlier, just to be sure. Her car was in the lot. I took a photo from across the street, parked behind a landscaping truck. Blurry, grainy. But hers. Definitely hers. Custom plate. Gift from me back when I still thought gestures mattered. She said she'd had a team strategy session. At 5:30. On a Friday. In a hotel lobby bar. With no laptop. And came in reeking of Dior and espresso martinis. But sure. Strategy. I played dumb. It's my best role these days. Smile, nod, let her think I'm just a tired old guy clinging to traditions she's outgrown. Meanwhile, her phone buzzed twice while the waiter poured water. She didn't bother hiding it. Not even the courtesy of flipping it face down. By the time appetizers landed, ahi tuna for her, French onion soup for me, she'd already laughed 3 times at the screen. That silent, nose-crinkling giggle she used to give me back when I'd quote dumb sci-fi movies in bed. No? It was all for her little glowing rectangle. I knew who it was. I didn't need to look. But I did anyway. Her phone lit up just as she reached for her wine. Message preview. I wasn't trying to read it. Hell, I didn't even lean in. It was just there, loud as a gunshot in a library. Can't wait till this is over. Dessert, not the marriage LOL. Brian, director. That was the moment. Not a scream. Not a slap. Just silence. My eyes on the message, hers on her wine glass. She didn't even notice I saw it. Or maybe she did, and figured I was too cowardly to do anything. And she wouldn't have been wrong. At least, not yet. I looked back at my soup. The cheese had formed a crust by then. I cracked it with the side of my spoon and stirred slowly, letting the steam hit my face while her world spun obliviously across the table. Her hand rested near the base of her wine glass, nails immaculately painted, fingers twitching slightly, like they couldn't wait to start typing again. Our waiter asked if we wanted dessert. She perked up for the first time all night. Creme brulee, please, she said, handing him the menu without even a glance at me. Oh, and espresso. I ordered the same. Figured I might as well enjoy my last supper. The flame from the torch they used to brulee the sugar danced behind the kitchen window. It reminded me of the fireplace we used to sit by in the winter, back when she still wore that ridiculous fuzzy robe and curled her feet under mine. She used to say I was her heater, that my hands were too warm for a man in tech. Not anymore. Now she had Brian, who apparently preferred dessert to marriage. When the plates came, she hummed. Actually hummed. Broke the caramelized sugar with the back of her spoon like it was some French patisserie moment on Instagram. And still the phone buzzed again. I saw her glance down, eyes light up, lips twitch. She ducked a hair behind her ear like a schoolgirl on a crush. I picked up my spoon, scooped a piece of the custard, held it for a second, and took the bite. No anger, no question, no scene. Just the quiet satisfaction of a man who knew exactly how this would end. The first time I really knew, was in February. We were at a gala for her company, one of those smug, overpriced innovation and leadership banquets where everyone pretends their LinkedIn bios means something. She wore a black velvet dress with an emerald necklace I didn't recognize. I complimented it. She smiled like a politician. Oh, just a gift from the team. Holiday thing. You know how they are. I did not know how they were. What kind of corporate team gives personalized emerald necklaces? 2 weeks later, she gifted me cufflinks. Same stone, same setting. Said they were a match set. Symbolic. I almost laughed. A match set? For her and her boss? That night, while she slept next to me with one leg hanging off the side like she couldn't stand even unconscious proximity, I opened a spreadsheet. Named it Clause Enforcement, Trigger, Infidelity. Not dramatic. Just necessary. Because while she thought I was sipping decaf and aging quietly into irrelevance, I was watching, recording, everything. The second breadcrumb came in April. She told me she was flying to Dallas for a conference. Left on a Thursday, came back Sunday evening smelling like sandalwood and exhaustion. Her suitcase looked untouched. One outfit wrinkled. No lanyard, no flyers, no branded keychains. That was odd. Rachel loved conference swag, pins, notebooks, anything with logos. Not this time. I checked our shared Amex when she fell asleep. Hotel charge. Chicago. For nights. Same room billed twice for minibar items. One of them included 2 whiskey doubles and a bottle of Pinot Noir. She doesn't drink Pinot. She hates it. Calls it sad wine. I kept the screenshot. Dropped it in a folder labeled inconsistencies. And still, I said nothing. Let her prance through life thinking I was too old, too slow, too trusting. Let her mock my loyalty as weakness. I wasn't planning a confrontation. I was building a case file. I waited until May to confront the phone plan. I already knew there were late-night calls. She'd step out onto the patio, say she needed air, and return 30 minutes later with windblown hair and this dazed, glowing look. Like some suburban Juliet basking in a secret balcony romance. But when the bill came, I exported the call log. 47 calls in 30 days. 31 of them after midnight. All to the same number, Brian W. She saved it under Team Ops. I saved it under Exhibit B. And just to be sure, I ran a people search. Brian Woodson, Director of Product Strategy. Married. 2 kids. Also the guy who winked at her across the table when I visited her office mixer in March. The guy she claimed barely knew her outside meetings. I didn't confront. I didn't accuse. I didn't even blink. Because unlike her, I read everything I signed. Especially the prenup she thought was just pre-wedding noise. Every time she walked in the room with that smug, breezy walk, like she was doing me a favor by staying married, I mentally updated the document, tabbed the evidence, labeled the folders, drafted the statement. She thought I was blind. No, sweetheart. I was waiting. She called it just paperwork. 14 years ago, she was standing barefoot in our first apartment, flipping through it with a glass of cheap Chardonnay in one hand and a pen in the other. I remember her laughing, actually laughing, like I'd handed her a contract written in Klingon. Oh, come on, Dean. You think I'm marrying you for money? What is this, a soap opera? I smiled sheepishly, told her it wasn't about us. It was about the business. My dad had passed away 6 months earlier. Left me a skeleton crew real estate firm and a trust, and one very sharp, very old-school lawyer who said, and I quote, "You don't insure a house after it burns down." So, I had the prenup drawn up. Quietly, respectfully. I was 39. She was 25. Ambitious. Witty. Charming as hell. I was smitten, yes, but I wasn't stupid. She skimmed the pages, signed it in 15 minutes, and made a joke about how she couldn't wait for the day I had to live off her fortune. Then she kissed me, handed the pen back, and went to heat up lasagna. That was the last time she ever acknowledged it. The clause in question, Section 12B, was written in plain English. Should either party engage in a romantic or sexual relationship outside the bounds of this marriage, and should said relationship be documented through verifiable means, all joint marital property will be subject to immediate separation, with no obligation of spousal support, maintenance, or alimony from the non-offending party. This clause is enforceable upon presentation of evidence and declaration by the non-offending party, without the requirement of mutual agreement. In short, you cheat, you leave with what you came in with. No court battles. No half this, half that. No drawn out, we built this together, nonsense. Rachel never asked about it again. But I did. Every time we made a major purchase, furniture, kitchen remodel, hell, even the Tesla, I made sure the funds were traced back to the trust. Not our joint account. Not her salary. Just mine. I kept records. Documented invoices. Made sure the deed on the house stayed in the business's name. Because the truth is, even back then, there was a little voice in the back of my head whispering, just in case. She mocked the prenup the way people mock emergency exits on planes. Funny until the engine catches fire. Now it was my parachute. My quiet, stainless steel, legally bulletproof escape. She thought it was just paperwork. But that stack of signed, notarized pages in my fireproof safe? That wasn't a document. It was a loaded gun, and she'd just handed me the trigger. 3 days before our anniversary dinner, I walked into my attorney's office carrying a black leather portfolio and a peppermint latte I didn't even want. It was raining hard enough to make the sidewalks look like glass, and I remember thinking appropriate. "Dean," Mitchell said, standing when I entered. Same sharp suit, same buzz cut he's had since the Bush administration. We'd worked together on zoning issues, commercial permits, my father's estate. Never on anything personal. Until now. He pointed me toward the conference table. I sat down, opened the folder, and began sliding things across the lacquered wood like playing cards in a high-stakes poker game. First, the printouts. Messages between Rachel and Brian. Not the obvious ones. That would have been too clean. No, these were the kind that slipped through the cracks. Shared calendar entries labeled quarterly sync, offsite. A photo of their lunch from a boutique hotel restaurant in Chicago, captioned with a heart emoji. A meme she sent him about how to hide your man from your husband that I still can't decide is more pathetic than insulting. Next came the photos. Surveillance stills from a PI I hired back in March. The guy was old school, didn't text, didn't email, insisted on face-to-face drop-offs like it was 1996 and pagers were still a thing. But he was good. One still showed her getting into Brian's car, hand on his chest, laughing. Another showed her entering the hotel with a tote bag she never brought back home. Third, the hotel records. 2 weekends, once in Chicago, once in Denver. Both times, company card didn't match the room name. But Brian's personal card? Swiped for upgrades. Champagne, valet, breakfast in bed service. Last, her signature. On the prenup. Full legal name. Signed in blue ink on a Thursday 14 years ago. Witnessed. Notarized. Indexed. Mitchell flipped through each item slowly. Methodically. Like he was enjoying a fine cigar. When he was done, he closed the folder, leaned back in his chair, and nodded once. Just once. "She's not just caught," he said, voice calm and brutal. "She's cornered." That's when I handed him the envelope. "Serve it at noon the day after," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "After? Our dinner reservation's Friday night. Let her enjoy the creme brulee." He gave a dry chuckle. "Cold." "Calculating," I corrected. "She spent months making a fool of me in broad daylight. I'm just giving her a candlelit farewell." He reached into his drawer and slid over the signed confirmation. "We'll deliver the notice by courier. And the full packet to Brian's employer." I nodded. That was the final touch. She thought she was the only one orchestrating something behind the scenes. She didn't realize I'd already scored the ending, written the script, and scheduled opening night. Tickets were free. But the cost? Oh, the cost was everything. "So, you gonna say anything, or just sulk through the whole evening?" Rachel's voice broke through the low hum of clinking glassware and soft jazz. She wasn't whispering. She never whispered when she wanted control. Her fork scraped loudly against the edge of the plate as she pushed the half-eaten creme brulee forward, like it had offended her. I looked up, finally, like I'd just now noticed she existed. She gave me that smirk, tight-lipped, laced with mild contempt. "You mad I texted during dessert?" Jesus, Dean. It's not like I was sexting. Brian just had a deadline question, and I answered. "You know, work." There it was. That smug little tilt in her voice she always used when she thought she'd won. Like I was the unreasonable one for not applauding her multitasking. I reached into my inner coat pocket. No dramatics. No shaking hands. Just slow, measured calm. She paused when she saw the envelope plain white, thick, sealed with a sticker. I slid it across the table. It landed near the base of her wine glass, brushing against her phone, which buzzed again and lit up the screen. "Happy anniversary," I said, and then took a sip of my espresso like we were still just two people celebrating 14 years of marital bliss. Her brow furrowed. "What's this?" She picked it up, flipped it over, examined it like it might contain concert tickets or an overly sentimental letter. For a second, I think she thought it might be sweet. A last-ditch effort. A plea. She peeled back the sticker and unfolded the first page. Her eyes scanned the bold heading, Notice of Intent to Divorce, Enforcement of Prenuptial Agreement, Clause 12b. She blinked. Then came the next page. Exhibit A, Timeline of Documented Infidelity. Exhibit B, Surveillance photos, March 3rd, March 17th, April 2nd. Exhibit C. Hotel charges linked to Brian W. Non-disclosed company expenses. Exhibit D. Statement of unilateral property retention. By the time she got to her own signature, right there at the bottom of page 8, her hand had stopped moving. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I placed the coffee cup down gently. You were saying something about a deadline? The blood drained from her face so quickly I thought she might actually faint. She looked down at the envelope again like it had bitten her. This is a joke, right? She whispered, voice thin. You're the only one who's been laughing, I said, folding my napkin and setting it aside. But I figured I'd finally join the fun. Her hands started to shake. She reached for her phone, but paused. Maybe she suddenly realized Brian couldn't help her here. Or maybe she was debating whether to delete something before it was too late. Too late. God, she had no idea how late it really was. I waved at the waiter and smiled. We're all set. Could you bring the check? Rachel still hadn't said a word. Her mouth moved like she was trying to summon a protest, a denial, maybe even an apology. But her eyes kept flicking back to the page with the prenup clause, as if reading it enough times would make the wording change. I stood, buttoned my coat, and leaned down. You had dessert, I whispered. I brought the bill. Rachel chuckled. Not the polite kind. The kind you hear from someone who's certain they've still got the upper hand, like she was watching a toddler hand her a crayon drawing and call it legal. She waved the envelope slightly in the air. What is this? She grinned. A handwritten poem? Something about how I've changed, and you miss my lasagna. I didn't answer. Just leaned back, fingers wrapped around my coffee cup, letting the heat seep into my skin. I'd waited months for this exact moment. I wasn't about to rush it. She pulled the pages free and unfolded the first sheet lazily, still smiling, still confident, until she read the header. Her eyes narrowed. The grin faltered for just a beat. Then she read it aloud, softly, like she didn't quite believe the words. Notice of divorce and enforcement of prenuptial agreement. Silence. The jazz music in the background kept playing. Someone at a nearby table laughed. A fork scraped a plate. But at our table, you could have heard a heartbeat skip. She kept flipping. Page 2, Exhibit Summary. Attachments A through E. Page 3, Property Division Statement. Cold, numbered, final. Page 4, Prenup Signature Page. Her name. Her handwriting. Dated. Witnessed. She froze there. Fork in her right hand, poised midair. Left hand holding the document like it had turned radioactive. Then she turned the next page and found the photos. March 3rd. Her at the hotel. Him waiting in the driver's seat. March 17th. Her leaning into Brian at the cocktail lounge downtown. Hand resting on his thigh like no one was watching. April 2nd. Her entering the Marriott in leggings and that black windbreaker she said she left at yoga. The fork clinked against her plate as her fingers went slack. The smirk? Gone. Completely wiped. Her eyes began to dart, like a trapped animal in a cage, suddenly realizing the walls aren't just real, they're closing in. She looked at me. Then the pages. Then her phone. Trembling fingers hovered over the screen like she was trying to figure out if she could erase the last 6 months with a single swipe. She couldn't. Take your time, I said, swirling the espresso around in the tiny white cup. I've waited months. 1 more minute won't kill me. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Then opened it again. Dean, this is insane. You've been, what, spying on me? I smiled. No, Rachel. You were sloppy. I just paid attention. Another pause. Then the panic started to bleed in. Subtle, but real. I can explain, she whispered. I mean, it wasn't what you think. Brian and I are in 3 hotel records, 2 surveillance photos, and 47 late-night call logs. I cut in smoothly. But please, spin me a fairy tale. I've got time. She tried to speak again, but her voice cracked halfway through. The sound of her unraveling? Better than jazz. This is low, Dean, she hissed, her voice sharp but shaking. You've been spying on me? Ah, there it was. Denial, Act 1. She clutched the folder like it might bite her, shoulders tight, eyes darting around the restaurant as if someone might be watching. As if her humiliation was the part she couldn't stand, not the betrayal. not the marriage she treated like a weekend subscription she forgot to cancel. I didn't flinch, just kept my eyes on her. Calm, steady, surgical. You made it public, I said, folding my hands neatly on the table. I just documented it. Her jaw worked like she wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words fast enough. So instead she fumbled forward, clinging to the flimsiest branch left on her dead tree of dignity. It wasn't serious, she snapped. We were just talking. That's all. Work talk. You're blowing this way out of. I reached across the table and flipped the stack of papers to the page marked with a yellow tab. Mid-paragraph. Centered quote. Her own message extracted from a WhatsApp backup. You're the only reason I get out of bed. I want to wake up next to you permanently. Brian. I didn't even say anything. Just tilted my head slightly so she'd be sure I was giving her the moment. Letting her read it. Letting her stew in it. Her mouth fell open, barely moving. Her cheeks flushed red, not with shame. With anger. The kind of anger that only comes when someone dares to expose your mess without your permission. You went into my phone? Nope, I said. You backed it up to our shared iCloud. Autosync. Very thoughtful of you. She stared. Silent now. Her brain still scanning for the next defense, next manipulation, like a magician running out of sleight-of-hand tricks. Dean, I didn't mean for it to go that far, she finally whispered, voice cracking like a windshield under pressure. It was just. I don't know. I felt invisible. I didn't plan anything. He listened. You never listen anymore. There it was. Act 2. Blame. Like I'd made her cheat. Like my silence and stability were offenses worth torching a marriage over. Classic narcissist playbook. I leaned in. Rachel, I paid the mortgage. I ran the numbers on your failing consulting side project. I hosted your sister's baby shower in my own home while Brian was texting you pictures of hotel keycards. And you're standing here telling me you felt invisible? She blinked. Once. Twice. I was tired, she murmured. I didn't think you'd care. Oh, I cared, I said, sipping my coffee again. That's why we're here. If I didn't care, you'd be eating dessert with your boyfriend in some Hilton bar while I paid for the roof over your head. She swallowed hard. Her fork lay untouched. Her phone, still glowing beside her, buzzed once more. She didn't even look at it this time. I sat back, folding the folder closed. And before you ask, no, you don't get the house. Her lip trembled. This wasn't the conversation she expected, but it was the only one she was going to get. By the time Rachel was whispering half-hearted apologies over untouched dessert, Brian was already living out the fallout in real time on the 17th floor of a glass tower that looked impressive from the outside and cold as a morgue from the inside. That morning, around 8:15 a.m., a thick, nondescript manila envelope landed on his assistant's desk. No return address. No note. Just a single label typed cleanly on the front. For HR. Urgent. Inside, neatly bound, screenshots of texts between him and Rachel, dozens of them. The flirty ones, sure. The compromising ones. But also the ones that included language like stuck in traffic, charging dinner to the team card again LOL, and should we say it's a client lunch like last time? A second section followed. Printouts of expense reports from the company's internal system, marked up with highlighter and annotated with side-by-side comparisons of Rachel's calendar, Brian's travel logs, and hotel invoice timestamps. Then a breakdown. A brutal one. Titled, Itemized Violations of Policy 3.4, Ethics, Policy 5.2, Conduct, Policy 7.1, Travel Reimbursement. Page after page. Cross-referenced. Color-coded. Easy enough for a half-asleep compliance officer to understand, and devastating enough to trigger a red alert meeting before Brian had finished his first coffee. By noon, his keycard stopped working on the executive floor. He was told to pack a few things and work remotely until the situation is reviewed. By 3 p.m., IT had begun freezing his internal accounts. By 5 p.m., his LinkedIn had been quietly updated. Not by him. He wasn't that fast. But by someone monitoring his profile, waiting for it. Open to work. No press release. No explanation. Just a void where his position used to be. Another, Director of Product Strategy, already listed in the company's org chart before dinner even hit the table. Rachel didn't know yet. She was too busy trying to stage a comeback in front of me, fumbling through excuses while her personal apocalypse brewed in real time. Her world was shrinking, one silent notification at a time. And me? I didn't lift a finger, didn't make a call, didn't raise my voice. I just sent a package. With facts. With receipts. With timelines that lined up a little too neatly for HR to ignore. I didn't want revenge. Not really. I wanted results. And Brian? He was just the first domino. She locked herself in the guest bathroom as soon as we got home. Didn't say a word on the drive, just stared out the window like she was watching her reflection for answers. Her phone was gripped in both hands like a lifeline, though she hadn't unlocked it since dessert. I could tell she was afraid of what she might see. Brian's silence would be deafening by now. 10 minutes later, I heard the muffled click of her phone unlocking, followed by the first trembling sob. Then came the call. Anna, can you just pick up, please? She whispered through clenched teeth, voice raw with the panic of someone realizing the parachute isn't strapped on after all. Please, I screwed up. I really screwed up, Dean. He found everything. Her sister picked up on the second ring. I leaned back in my office chair and sipped my bourbon, door open just enough to hear. Not because I needed to know what was being said. I already knew, but I wanted to feel it. I wanted to witness the moment Rachel learned the difference between betrayal and consequences. Anna's voice came through the phone, measured, low, and cold in a way only family can manage. Yeah, I know. Dean told me. Silence. He what? Rachel stammered. I've known for a couple weeks now, Anna continued. He called me. Not to get support. Not to gossip. He just wanted to make sure someone else knew. Someone who might talk you down before you hit the rocks. Rachel gasped like the air had betrayed her too. You knew and didn't say anything? You mean like how you slept with your married boss and didn't say anything? Anna shot back. Yeah, I guess silence runs in the family. I heard a choked sob. Then another. I thought he'd never actually leave, Rachel said, the words spilling out like she barely believed them herself. I mean, he's Dean. He never even raised his voice. That's the problem, Anna said, her voice now so flat it could have been granite. You never thought he mattered. You thought you were the fire, and he was the fireplace, quiet, dependable, there to hold you no matter how hot you burned. But he wasn't furniture, Rachel. He was a man. A good one. And you set him on fire. Rachel didn't respond. She couldn't. All you could hear was shallow breathing, soft sobs, and the faint tapping of her nail against the edge of the porcelain sink. Anna didn't hang up. She just let the silence grow. After a moment, I stood from my chair, walked to the hallway, and knocked once, lightly, on the door. You're going to want to check Brian's LinkedIn, I said. Then I walked away, and left her to face it. Alone. The house was never really hers. Sure, she painted the kitchen that awful sage green, bought throw pillows with ironic quotes like, "Love grows here," and "Bless this mess." Hung a rustic sign over the fireplace that said, "Home is where we laugh loudest," as if that could drown out the silence that had lived between us for the last 3 years. But the deed? The deed had my name on it, only my name. Always had. When we moved in, Rachel called it our dream house. I didn't correct her then. Let her pick out drapes, let her host her book club, let her throw her whole curated Pinterest energy into the place like it was some sacred sanctuary of domestic royalty. But the truth? It was mine before we ever met. Inherited from my father's portfolio, renovated with my own hands and my premarital trust fund. Not a dime from our joint accounts went into the foundation, the roofing, the landscaping, or the HVAC that she always cranked up while pretending to work from home. And now? It was mine again, formally, legally, irreversibly. The prenup laid it out in black and white. Property owned prior to the marriage remained with the original owner. Joint property? Liquidated, clean-cut, surgically clean. No prolonged arbitration. No courtroom dramatics. Just math and signatures. She tried, of course, tried to sob her way through the mediation. Talked about emotional investment and how she helped make it a home. Said things like, "I built memories in those walls," as if nostalgia could undo 14 typed clauses and a notary stamp. The mediator, bless her soul, gave Rachel a whole 5 minutes to vent. Then slid the repair logs across the table. Every roofing bill. Every Home Depot receipt. Every licensed contractor invoice. Documented, organized, and stapled with the appropriate trust withdrawal statement right behind it. Upgrades? On record. Paid through the business. Appliances? Trust fund debit. Garage expansion? Part of a tax-deductible home office expense, again, mine. Rachel went silent. Her attorney shifted uncomfortably, probably wondering why she hadn't read the fine print back when she still had time to negotiate. Or maybe he was wondering how she'd married someone so methodical and still thought she could wing her way through a divorce. She got to keep her clothes. Her jewelry, too, the pieces Brian hadn't bought her. She asked about the leather couch in the den. I offered to help her carry it to the curb. She asked if she could take the Le Creuset set. I told her it was a wedding gift from my side of the family. In the end, she walked away with exactly what she brought into the marriage. Her suitcase, her smugness, cracked but still twitching, and an overinflated sense of how far charm could carry her. She stood in the driveway for a while that day, just staring at the house. Keys already surrendered. Locks already changed. I watched from the upstairs office as she sat on her luggage for a moment, probably waiting for a last-minute rescue, a Brian, a miracle. But the only thing that pulled up was her sister's car. Anna didn't even get out to help. She just popped the trunk. And Rachel climbed in like a guest at her own funeral. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for the dust to settle around Rachel's crater of a life. 14 days after the anniversary dinner that detonated her reality, I stepped into a sunlit conference room on the top floor of a downtown high-rise. Polished walnut table. Bottled still and sparkling. Non-disclosure agreements in leather folios. Across from me sat 3 executives from a private equity group salivating over legacy real estate. To them, I was just another old-school founder looking to cash in. To me, it was clean exit, phase 2. I signed the paperwork just after noon. A partial sale, strategic. Enough to give them majority interest in the operations, while I retained all intellectual property, key assets, and the brand. My father would have called it retaining the spine. I called it a surgical extraction with a payout north of 8 figures. The press release went live by 3 p.m. By 4 o'clock, the photo hit the trades. There I was, suit pressed, pen in hand, shaking on the deal at the head of the table. And beside me, smiling, composed, unassuming in her slate gray blazer, was Lisa, my paralegal. Well, former paralegal. Now, her name sat proudly just beneath mine in the announcement. Dean Collins, Chairman, Collins Properties. Lisa Jensen, Chief Operating Officer, Collins Properties. The caption? New chapter. Stronger than ever. I didn't write it. But damn, it fit. Rachel saw the article within the hour. I know because she still hadn't removed me from her Google News alerts. The bitter irony, she only found out about her own irrelevance through the same feed she used to track her social climbing. I imagine it started like a paper cut. Dean? In the business section? Then the sting. Lisa. Lisa, the boring little legal assistant Rachel once referred to as functional beige. The woman she never once invited to dinner, never remembered the name of. The one who sat in the corner of meetings taking notes Rachel never thought anyone actually read. Lisa had always been smart, organized, loyal to a fault. She worked behind the scenes for years, kept my life airtight while I tried to keep my marriage duct taped together. I started giving her more responsibility last year. Quarterly reports, strategy briefs, staff management. She never missed a beat. Rachel hadn't noticed, but Lisa had. When the documents were served, it was Lisa who notarized the final pages. She didn't ask questions, just did her job. Unshakable. And now? Her new bio, updated by end of day, read. Chief Operating Officer, Collins Properties. Committed to growth, innovation, and ethical leadership. The ethical part wasn't a coincidence. Neither were the congratulatory comments piling up under the LinkedIn post. Well deserved, Lisa. Finally, a leadership team that knows what they're doing. Dean and Lisa power move. This is going to shake the market. Rachel, once the self-declared queen of social circles and status games, was nowhere in that conversation. No one asked where she'd gone. No one noticed she was missing. Turns out, when you spend years mistaking people's quiet for weakness, you don't hear them when they rise. You just feel the floor disappear beneath you. It came in on a Tuesday night. I was sitting on the balcony of my new condo, top floor, corner unit, full skyline view. The kind of place with glass railings, remote control blinds, and wine delivered monthly by people who pronounce sommelier correctly. I just poured a Cabernet that cost more than Rachel used to spend on a spa weekend. I wasn't celebrating anything in particular, just breathing easier. The phone buzzed. I glanced down, already knowing what it would be. Rachel. Can we talk? I was stupid. You were the best thing I had. It was written like a final move in a game she didn't realize had already ended. No punctuation at the end, like she was leaving a thread open. A hopeful pause. A loophole. She never understood the fine print. She thought the prenup was just legal noise. She thought my silence meant surrender. She thought betrayal could be forgiven if it was served with enough tears and half-truths. But what she really misunderstood, what she never once tried to grasp, was the real contract. Not the paper she signed. The one I lived. The one where loyalty meant something. Where love was shown, not leveraged. Where partnership didn't mean leverage or scoreboard keeping. She didn't read that one. Didn't live that one. I tapped out my reply slowly, deliberately. No anger. No bitterness. Just truth. You never read the contract. Not the one you signed, or the one I lived by every day. Then I hit block. Final. Clean. Permanent. I stared at the screen for a second longer. Watched the thread disappear. Watched the illusion vanish. She was a closed tab now. Nothing more. I set the phone down, picked up my glass, and leaned back in the chair as the last of the sun lit the skyline in gold. No applause. No final speech. Just quiet. A kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. The phone buzzed again. A different name. Lisa. Dinner at 8? I smiled. Me. Can't wait. And just like that, I toasted the end of one life. And the quiet, deliberate beginning of something better. The towel dropped from my hands, but I didn't flinch. Her laugh, this dry, hollow chuckle that bounced off the laundry room tiles, hung in the air like mildew. You're lucky I even let you touch me. That's what she said. Like I was some leper who'd won a raffle. Like decades of providing, fixing, covering her mistakes, and paying off her credit card messes were just some pathetic tribute she tolerated out of politeness. She turned, humming, tossing her blouse into the dryer like nothing happened. I just watched her. Not angry. Not even sad. Something quieter. Sharper. I folded the last t-shirt, that old one from the state fair we went to before her veneers, before her Pilates instructor with the stupid name, before she stopped asking how my day was. I folded it with more care than I'd handled her in months. Then I placed it neatly on the stack and walked out. In the hallway, I heard her phone buzz. A giggle. Another message? Another little compliment from whoever she thought was her escape hatch? Her voice changed when she texted lately airier, like she was suddenly 20 again. I used to like that sound. Now it just reminded me of how good liars always enjoy the setup. I passed the hall mirror. Looked at myself. Wrinkled, maybe. Slower than I was at 40, sure. But I built machines that could carve titanium to half a human hair's width. I ran a team of 20 men who didn't dare miss a measurement. I wasn't some slob hoping for scraps of affection. But in this house, I was a placeholder. And placeholders don't argue. We execute. Listen, quick break. We set a goal to hit 10K subscribers. So tap subscribe if you're liking these wild stories of betrayal. Now let's get back to the madness. So I went downstairs. Into the office. That drawer hadn't been opened in a while. Not since I printed out her client meeting calendar from iCloud and noticed it included 1-2 mini Tuesday dinners at the Birchstone, conveniently never billed to the brokerage account. Inside the drawer, the box. A small, smooth oak box I carved myself after retiring. It was supposed to hold cufflinks. Instead, it held clarity. I opened it. Empty, still. Not for long. I flipped open my laptop. No rush. No drama. Just a man doing what he always did, cataloging. Protecting. Cleaning up someone else's mess. The folder was still there, for when she smirks. First up, email printouts. A realtor friend of hers, Celeste, had CC'd her on some messages about fun weekends in Ridge Hill. Except the dates? Matched exactly with the retreats she claimed were for training. One even included a rental car receipt in Vanessa's name, with a second driver added. Not me. Then the texts. I'd synced her phone to the family iPad 6 months ago. She never noticed. Thought it was just for streaming Netflix in the guest room. One thread stuck out. Can't wait to see you outside the sheets for once. LOL. He responded with a thumbs up and a picture. Him, shirtless, in the mirror of a hotel bathroom. I recognized the wallpaper. The birchstone again. Funny how betrayal has a scent. That place always smelled like lavender and stale desperation. She came down later that night, makeup off, wearing that smug little robe she wore when she wanted to play affectionate wife. "You didn't say goodnight," she said, fake concern painting her tone. "I figured you were tired of touching me," I replied. Smiled. She blinked. The moment passed. "You're being dramatic," she muttered. I nodded slowly, like a man who didn't mind being underestimated. Because men like me? We don't need second chances. We need evidence. The house went quiet around 11:17 p.m. Vanessa had dozed off in bed, tablet sliding off her chest, some real estate podcasts still whispering about market trends she didn't understand without her assistant explaining them. Her face twitched in sleep. Maybe some dream where she was still the prize she imagined herself to be, holding court on Instagram in her little beige Range Rover, wine glass in hand, fake laughs echoing in empty houses for sale. I stood in the hallway for a few minutes, listening to her soft snores and the occasional ding of some unread message from the man she claimed was just a contact in the industry. Then I turned back into the office. No lights. Just the desk lamp. Just me and the box. I slid open the drawer. There it was, small, square, oak. Smooth edges, brass hinges I polished myself last spring. I had made it with the intention of gifting it to her for our anniversary. Funny. Back then I thought we still had one coming. I placed the box in the center of the desk and opened it. Still empty. But not for long. Not tonight. To the left of the desk, my printer clicked on. The first of the emails began to slide out. Celeste messages, forwarded flights, airbags not listed under our joint account. Vanessa always thought I was the kind of man who didn't check receipts. Maybe that was true. But I checked patterns. And people like her always left fingerprints. I organized the emails by date. Chronology matters when you're about to dismantle someone's sense of safety. Then came the texts. I opened the iPad, screen already unlocked. She never realized the backup sync was still on. In her head, tech was just wires and chargers. In mine, it was leverage. I didn't rush. She'd called me slow for years. "You move like you're buffering," she once joked in front of friends. They laughed. I smiled. Because slowness isn't weakness. It's precision. I took screenshots of the messages she'd sent between showings, ones with location tags still attached. "I needed that last night," she wrote in one. "Let's do a quick lunch before I head home." The timestamp? 1:42 p.m. She told me she was stuck in a board meeting. The he in question? A contractor we once hired to fix our deck. I had offered him beer. He thanked me like a son. I scrolled further. Her tone with him, sweet, sugary, nothing like how she spoke to me anymore. One message chilled me more than the others. "He's nice but dull." A placeholder. My life started late. Dull. Placeholder. My knuckles went white against the edge of the desk. But I didn't let it sit long. I breathed out, clicked save, and dropped the files into the USB folder labeled June Justice. Encrypted. Backed up. Copied 3 times. 1 flash drive. 1 cloud. 1 burnable DVD hidden in my tool chest behind the broken caliper bracket she thought was junk. Then I backed up her car's GPS logs. Her new Lexus had tracking through the app, something she never disabled. Rookie mistake. 3 Tuesday visits to a private condo downtown. She told me she hated going downtown. Said it was too noisy. Guess some noise she could tolerate. Each location point was exported. I took a map printout and circled the addresses. Labeled them in fine red Sharpie. I checked the clock. 12:42 a.m. Not rage. Not revenge. Preparation. The box wasn't ready yet. Not tonight. It wasn't just about stuffing it with evidence. It was about the rhythm. The moment. The setup that makes the silence scream louder than words ever could. And that moment was coming. For now, I shut the box and returned to bed. She came into the kitchen like nothing ever rotted in her mouth. Still in her satin robe, barefoot, mascara smudged from last night's lazy half-rinse. She poured herself that pretentious oat milk creamer she always said made her feel cleaner inside. I was already at the table, sipping black coffee and watching the steam curl like smoke signals from a life slowly burning under its own lies. "You're quiet," she said, yawning. "You grumpy again?" I turned my head slow, deliberate, like I was loading a bullet into a chamber. Nah, I said, letting the silence stretch. Just tired. She smiled. Tight, dismissive, the way women do when they think they've decoded you and found nothing worth reading. Then she leaned against the counter, scrolling her phone, thumb twitching, nails clacking the screen. I've got that meeting at 10. Big listing. Might run long. She tapped her watch. Should be back for dinner, though. Don't wait if I'm late. Big listing. I nodded. Break a leg. She kissed the air near my forehead, already walking off before I could even pretend to reciprocate. I waited. Gave it 20 minutes. Long enough for her to think I was back in the garage, cleaning drill bits or sorting through old screws like the quiet, neutered man she thought I was. Then I got in my truck. I didn't follow too closely. I'd been practicing. Weeks of casual observation meant I already knew her timing, her shortcuts, her signature vanity turn she thought made her driving look youthful. She stopped at that boutique cafe on Main. Latte in hand, she turned left down Aspen Boulevard. Not toward the commercial lot. Not toward the office. I parked a half block down from where she did, parallel, out of view, like I'd done twice before. That's when he pulled up. Red BMW. Clean. Too clean. Not a work car. And not the kind of guy who keeps business folders in the front seat. He stepped out with a lazy grin, in gym clothes, not even pretending he was there for business. And Vanessa? She lit up like I hadn't seen in 5 years. Arms wide. Lips wider. They didn't kiss. Not on the lips. She hugged him, but not like a friend. Not even like a lover. Like property that just came off the market, ready for a second tour. I watched them laugh. His hand lingered on her back. She didn't pull away. I didn't flinch. I took one photo. Not 10. Not a video. One photo. Then deleted it. I already had what I needed. That wasn't for a courtroom or even a confrontation. That was just for calibration, for me. To confirm that the man she said was just a gym contact wasn't training her core. He was replacing it. The truth was ugly, but the way it settled inside me, it felt surgical. I didn't feel rage. I felt relief. It was no longer theory. It was practice. She got back home that night around 6:40 p.m., said the client was a flake. Blamed it on traffic, on scheduling confusion. She walked past me on the couch like she'd just survived a long day of honest work. I looked up from my crossword. Asked, get the listing? She smiled. Working on it. I nodded. Her perfume still carried the same citrus note she wore on our anniversary. Except now, it smelled like the end. She was humming again. That fake, airy hum she used to reserve for happy things, like brunch with her girlfriends or finding a designer bag on sale. Now, it showed up when she was lying. It floated from her throat like a weather vane spinning in the wind, directionless, trying to appear casual, but always pointing away from the truth. Networking dinner tonight, she announced while spritzing perfume on her wrists. Couple brokers from Philly are in town. Gotta make an appearance. Big night? I asked, not looking up from the cabinet I was pretending to rearrange. She turned, posed in the hallway mirror, fluffing her hair. Not huge, she said. Just opportunities. Opportunities. I'd heard her call things that before. New listings. Gym trainers. The married dentist who sponsored her office holiday party and once called her sparkling. She picked a navy dress that zipped up the side, heels too tall for anyone with real work to do, and makeup that said she wanted to look 10 years younger, but only under warm lighting. You look nice, I said evenly. She smiled. Thanks. Then she left, not asking what I was doing that evening. She never did. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I closed the cabinet, walked to the office, and sat down with more purpose than I'd felt in weeks. I opened the laptop, entered her old iCloud password, still Vanessa RE 2019, and let the sync load. She'd gotten careless. The folder wasn't encrypted, not renamed, not even hidden. Just sitting in her drive like a grenade labeled, pull me. Vids. I clicked. 2 files. One labeled rooftop. The other, a timestamp and nothing more. I opened the first. Grainy. Low light. Wind catching the mic every few seconds. But there she was, Vanessa, hair pinned up, laughing too loudly across a high table set with cocktails. A man leaned in, same red BMW guy, clearly not networking. He tucked a stray curl behind her ear like they were in a movie neither of them deserved to be starring in. Then came the second video. The screen was dimmer, but the camera was set down on a dresser, facing the bed. Hotel wallpaper. Navy curtains. A lamp turned toward the corner. No faces, at least not at first. But voices? Voices are harder to deny. Vanessa's laugh again. Low. Breathless. Then words that made me freeze. He still thinks I'm going to that dumb mediation seminar. More laughter. Then skin. Movement. I didn't flinch. I didn't rewind. I didn't fast forward. I downloaded both files and dropped them onto a USB drive I'd labeled in black marker weeks ago, V-Choice. She had made her choice. I was just the filing clerk. I opened the box again. It still smelled faintly like lacquer and sawdust, clean, honest smells. The opposite of what I was putting inside. The flash drive nestled easily in the velvet lining. It didn't look like much, but it held everything. Her image. Her voice. Her betrayal in 1080p. I looked at the second compartment of the box. It had a slit where documents could slide in. Tomorrow, the printouts would go there. The map with the circled locations. Maybe the USB gets a label. Maybe not. The box wasn't full yet. But it was alive now. A sleeping thing with teeth. I closed it gently, clicked the latch shut, and went to bed. I didn't need to ask how her night went. She would lie, and I would let her. The house smelled like Prosecco and cover stories. Vanessa had been planning this birthday like it was a reboot, a reset. She called it her turning point year, like she'd just emerged from some cocoon of self-discovery instead of a bed she wasn't supposed to be in. Balloons draped in gold and blush. 42 and thriving. Printed on paper napkins next to a 3-tiered cake she insisted was low sugar, though she ordered it from the same bakery that upcharged fondant like it was cocaine. Her friends arrived in waves, squealing, hugging, wine-drunk before they even hit the porch. Women she hadn't spoken to in months suddenly showed up, filtered and polished, all of them carrying little designer bags and calling her babe, in tones sharp enough to slice fruit. I played the doting husband. Poured drinks. Grilled shrimp. Let them joke about keeping Scott away from the playlist, because I still like the Stones more than Spotify-approved garbage. She basked in it. Laughed loud. Wore white. Smiled with just enough teeth to make people wonder what secret she was keeping. Then came the toast. Glass in hand, standing on the second step of the patio, she cleared her throat. This year's been growth, she started, pausing for dramatic effect like she was on a TED Talk instead of a backyard with a half-broken fence. Second chances, she continued, locking eyes with no one in particular. Letting go of the past. Moving forward. Being brave. Her friends clapped. A few wooed. One of them cried, God knows why. I handed her the card just as the cake came out. She opened it lazily, probably expecting a spa gift card or some dull affirmation. One sentence inside. You're luckier than you know. She chuckled. Wow, cryptic, she said, holding it up. What does that mean? I smiled. Means what it says. More laughter. Someone handed her a glass of pink champagne. And then she saw it. The box. Small. Wooden. Polished. Sitting beside the cake like it had always belonged there. No bell. No note. Just there. Silent and real in a room full of noise and pretend. She froze for half a second, eyes narrowing just slightly. Enough that I caught it. The flicker behind her lashes. She wasn't sure why it was there, but her gut didn't like it. She reached toward it. I placed a hand on the lid before she could touch it. Not yet, I said quietly. She blinked. What's in it? She asked, trying to sound amused. I shrugged. Something real. That made her nervous. Not the words, but the calm I said them with. The way I didn't smirk. Didn't wink. I didn't try to tease. I just stood there. And for the first time in weeks, she wasn't sure how to perform. The laughter dipped. Her friend nudged her. What's in the box, V? Vanessa grinned thinly. Just Scott being mysterious. She tried to pass it off, but her hand lingered near the lid. She kept glancing at it like it might whisper something in front of the others. The rest of the night blurred. Drinks poured. Selfie snapped. Women complained about husbands while I handed out toothpicks and smiled like I hadn't already rewritten the last page of our story. She didn't open it that night, but I saw her look at it before she went to bed. Not with excitement. With suspicion. It started small. That's how panic always enters, like a splinter under the nail, subtle until you touch it. A week after the party, Vanessa stormed into the kitchen in her robe, hair half-pinned, mascara smudged in a way she usually reserved for fake, crying in bathroom selfies. She slammed her laptop shut, then opened it again. Slammed it twice more, like the third time would summon a miracle. "Why the hell won't this thing let me in?" she muttered, jabbing at the keyboard. "Did you touch my laptop?" I was at the sink rinsing a mug. Calm. Unhurried. "Nope," I said. "Need help?" I changed nothing. My password worked yesterday. Now it says it's invalid. I dried my hands. Maybe someone got into it. She paused, looked at me like I'd said something suspicious. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if your credentials changed without you doing it. Sounds like someone else got access." She blinked once, then turned back to the screen. "No, it's probably just syncing issues." Ah yes, the great evil of syncing. Her go-to scapegoat. By noon, she realized her work email had been locked too. She couldn't log into the internal portal. Her calendar was missing entries. And her brokerage-issued phone? Deadline. She assumed it was the carrier. Called customer service. They told her that number was deactivated 3 days ago by the listed account manager. That would be her boss. But her boss didn't do it. Not directly. Because 2 days earlier, 3 board members received an unmarked envelope each. No sender. No note. Just a USB, a printout of a hotel booking, and a few stills. Discreet. Precise. Nothing vulgar. Just compromising. The footage from the rooftop bar made her laugh look forced. The hotel image, grainy but unmistakable, showed her necklace. One she only wore when she wanted to feel expensive. And then there were the screenshots, text exchanges with clients that overlapped with company meetings. Time theft. Misrepresentation. A violation of professional ethics. An investigation was inevitable. But quiet. They didn't confront her. That would be too obvious. Too loud. They let her squirm. Her assistant stopped replying to texts. A longtime client asked to be reassigned. Then, the email came. Per protocol, you are being placed under internal review pending clarification of recent scheduling discrepancies. Vanessa didn't eat that night. She tried to act normal. Made her famous grilled chicken, which was just frozen breasts drowned in lemon pepper. I told her it was good. She barely tasted it. She broke around 11:30 p.m. She came downstairs in that oversized hoodie she wore when she was scared and tried to look small. Her hands were shaking. "I think someone's trying to ruin me," she said, her voice cracking. "They changed my logins. I'm being investigated. I didn't do anything wrong, Scott. I didn't." Her throat caught on the last word. I stood, took her into my arms. Held her. She sobbed into my shoulder like I was still her safe place. I rubbed her back gently. "Hey, it'll be okay." She clung to me. And I let her. Because the thing about revenge is, it doesn't always need to look like payback. Sometimes, it looks like comfort. And that's what scared her most. She started jumping at doorbells. The first time was the mailman. She nearly knocked over the ficus when the chime went off. Said she thought someone was coming to talk. I didn't ask who. I just kept sipping my coffee and flipping through a hardware catalog I wasn't even reading. Then came the call. I was upstairs, cleaning out a drawer when I heard her voice from the kitchen, sharp and panicked like a cornered animal. "David, what do you mean she saw it? How would she even?" No, I didn't send anything." She paced in circles, barefoot on tile. I stepped to the edge of the stairs, quiet. Her tone cracked. "I don't know how. It's not like it was labeled. No, I swear, I didn't record anything." Pause. Then, almost a whisper, "What is she going to do?" Another pause. Longer. "David, please. Just tell her it was old." It meant nothing. I walked back to the office and shut the drawer. By the time I came back down, she was in the dining room, staring at her phone like it had betrayed her personally. She didn't notice me. She didn't look up. Her fingers hovered, uncertain, like she was deciding who else she could text that wouldn't already know. 2 hours later, she made 3 calls in a row. I only heard one side of each. They all ended the same way, with silence and that tight, fake, "okay, no worries" voice she used when rejection scratched her pride. By evening, she poured a glass of wine. By 10, she poured another. That night, she tossed so much in her sleep I thought she might levitate. The next day, she didn't get dressed. She stayed in that robe, shuffling around the house like a widow without the benefit of an obituary. Her phone buzzed once around noon. She didn't pick it up. Instead, she opened her email on the tablet, read something 3 times, then just sat there. After a while, she whispered she quit. I glanced over. Who? My assistant. She just emailed saying she's moving to Denver. Effective immediately. I didn't say anything. Just kept folding laundry. Slow. Methodical. The towel creases lined up perfectly. Vanessa stood for a long time with her arms crossed, lips pressed into each other like they were trying to keep a secret from slipping out. That night, she took a sleeping pill for the first time in months. The next morning, I found her at the kitchen island, head in her arms, tea untouched. I boiled some water, pulled down the tin of chamomile blend she always said helped calm the hum. I placed the mug in front of her gently. No words. She looked up, hollow-eyed. Smudged eyeliner. Hair tied too tight, like she was trying to hold herself together physically. She reached for the mug. Thank you, she said quietly, almost like she was surprised I still remembered what she liked. I nodded. You deserve peace, I told her. Her eyes searched mine, trying to figure out if it was pity or threat. It wasn't either. It was something colder. Compassion with a kill switch. She came home quieter than usual. No slamming of the car door. No clack of heels across the driveway. Just the faint, deliberate click of the front lock and the slow creak of the door, as if even the wood knew it shouldn't make a sound tonight. She told me she was going to therapy. First time she'd mentioned that. Said it like a dare, like she wanted to be praised for it. Look at me. I'm doing the work now. Her blouse was still tucked in too neatly, lipstick too perfect. The kind of effort no one makes just to cry on a stranger's couch for $200 an hour. Went okay, she said, not meeting my eyes. Draining, you know? Sure, I said, flipping through a car magazine I had no intention of reading. You hungry? No, just tired. She wandered upstairs. Not fast, not slow, just careful. I gave it 10 minutes, then followed. By the time I reached the top step, I heard her open the bedroom door and stop. Dead silence. I stood just outside the hallway, still as a shadow. The box was there now, on her side of the bed, closed, perfectly centered on her pillow like a crown. She didn't speak, didn't touch it. For the next hour, she sat on the edge of the bed staring at it, legs crossed, one foot bouncing slightly, barely visible except when her toes curled like she was trying to grip the carpet for balance. At one point she leaned forward, hovered her fingers over the lid, then pulled back, like it might explode. Or confess. Eventually, she opened it. I watched her in the reflection of the hallway mirror, angled just right. Her hands moved slow, unsure if they were allowed. Inside. A flash drive. Plain. Black. Labeled you. A printed map. GPS coordinates circled in red ink. 3 exact locations. 3 exact times. Her Lexus's exact trail, logged weekly, methodically. One photo, black and white. Blurred around the edges but unmistakable. Her. The man. A bed. Her necklace visible, the one she only wore on special evenings. And then the note. Not typed. Not printed. Handwritten. In my clean, blocky print. 3 days to pack. Then I file. Or, we pretend none of this happened. Your call. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, stone still, holding that note like it was radioactive. Her breathing shallow, her lips tight, reading it over and over like she was hoping the words might rearrange themselves into something easier to deny. Her phone buzzed once on the nightstand. She didn't even glance at it. Midnight came and went. The house grew colder. She stayed awake, curled in the fetal position on her side, the box still open beside her, as if closing it might make the contents disappear. I lay beside her. Didn't speak. Didn't touch her. Just let the weight of that box do the talking. She didn't sleep. And I didn't need to. She started on day 1 with roses. Bright red, the kind I used to buy her after her open houses. Back when a successful sale meant takeout and movie night, not secret dinners with men who called her V and didn't know her middle name. She placed them in a crystal vase on the kitchen table like they belonged there, like anything beautiful could still grow in a place this barren. I made coffee. She hovered. Thought you liked roses, she said, voice light, almost musical. I like honesty more, I replied. She didn't smile. By noon, she was making soup. From scratch. The way she used to pretend was her therapy when she felt out of control. This time, though, The kitchen stayed too quiet. No music, no humming, no clattering of dishes. Just careful motion, as if making perfect broth could erase her name from a flash drive. That evening, she came down in silk. No bra. Hair curled the way I liked it in another lifetime. She touched my hand during dinner, then my knee. Still love me? She whispered, biting her lower lip like it still had power. I looked at her, not with anger, not with lust, just a strange, clinical sympathy. You should sleep, I said, wiping my mouth with a napkin. You've had a long day. She didn't cry, but something inside her collapsed, quiet and irreversible, like a floorboard giving out under polished heels. Day 2, she got practical. Tried to play the adult. Sat across from me at breakfast and asked, "Can we talk?" Like we were two professionals negotiating a merger. I nodded. Let her speak. She wanted to reset things. Maybe take a trip. Maybe therapy. Together this time. I nodded again. You can plan something. You've got time. She stared. So you're considering it? I'm considering everything, I said. Later that afternoon, she checked her accounts. Every shared fund? Moved. Every credit line she piggybacked on? Closed. Her brokerage stocks? Split already, mine frozen for security, hers untouched and fully visible to auditors. She tried calling her lawyer. I know because I heard her screaming through the bathroom door. You never said there was a fidelity clause. Pause. No, he brought it up. With evidence. Physical evidence. She came out with red eyes and a forced calm. Like a newscaster reporting a flood while standing ankle-deep in water. You had this planned, she said, voice low. For how long? Long enough to not need to raise my voice, I said. Day 3, she got quiet. Really quiet. She didn't cook. Didn't flirt. Didn't lie. She just walked from room to room like a visitor in her own life, touching picture frames, folding towels that were already folded. She stopped at our wedding photo once, held it for 5 whole minutes. Then she put it face down. That night, I came home from the hardware store. The house was immaculate. Vacuum lines still fresh. Bathroom counter wiped. Guest room bed neatly made. In our bedroom, the difference was almost poetic. Her side of the closet, empty. Drawers open, contents cleared. Suitcases by the door. Everything she came into this marriage with, nothing more, nothing less. On the bed, only one pillow. Mine. She was sitting on the edge, suitcase by her knees. Can I ask one thing? She said, not looking at me. I nodded. Do you hate me? I stood there a moment, then said, no. She exhaled, relief or dread. I just finally loved myself enough not to be quiet anymore. And I turned off the light. She waited until the last hour. The house was dark, silent, but for the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the wall clock she once said didn't match the aesthetic. I was in the living room, polishing a wrench just to keep my hands moving. The kind of small, mindless task that kept me from staring at the front door. And then she stepped in from the hallway. No makeup. Hair flat. Just her. Raw. Or as close to it as she knew how to be. She was holding the box, cradling it like an urn. Her eyes were red, sleepless. But for once, not defiant. Not smug. Not armored in denial. Just broken. Scott, she said, voice trembling. Please. I made a mistake. I was stupid. I was insecure. I thought I needed more, but I didn't interrupt. She kept going, like she was trying to outpace the end of something. I was lost, okay? I felt unseen. I wanted to feel young, desired. And you were always just there. Steady. I didn't realize how much that meant. Not until I saw what life without you looks like. She stepped closer. I don't want to lose this. You. Us. I'll go to counseling. I'll tell everyone it was my fault. I'll sign anything. Just don't let this be the end. Her voice cracked like glass. I stood slowly. Walked over. Took a long look at the woman I once built a life around. She clutched the box tighter against her chest, like it might shield her from the judgment in my silence. You said, I began, that I was lucky you let me touch you. She froze. You said that like it was mercy, I continued, stepping closer, eyes locked on hers. Like it was a gift. A tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't wipe it. But now, I said, voice steady, no one will touch your name without gloves. Her knees buckled slightly. She pressed her lips shut to keep from sobbing too loud. The kind of sob that draws pity. I wasn't giving her that. I opened the door. Cool night air poured in. Clean. Quiet. Final. She didn't move. I nodded toward the driveway. Your ride's here. She turned slowly, step by step, her dignity peeling off like dead skin. At the threshold, she stopped. Do I mean nothing to you now? I didn't answer. I didn't owe her clarity. Just closure. She stepped out onto the porch. I took the door and closed it. Then I locked it. Not with fury. Not with satisfaction. With precision. The kind of click that seals a tomb. I walked back to the kitchen, poured the last of the coffee from the pot, sat at the table where I used to beg for connection. Then I picked up my phone, turned it off, placed its screen down, and went to bed. No pillow on her side. No weight beside me. Just breath. Just silence. Just sleep. The first real sleep in years. You're not man enough to leave, she said, that smug little grin curling like a worm at the edge of her wine glass. I was halfway through a mouthful of Cabernet when she dropped the line. Right there, in front of 6 of our so-called friends. And the worst part? No one flinched. Some chuckled. A few glanced at me like I was supposed to join the joke. Like I was supposed to laugh at my own castration. I didn't. I swallowed the wine, not the insult. My fork hit the plate with the soft clink of finality, and I looked at her, really looked. Not at the woman I married, but at the stranger she'd become. The makeup was heavier now, the dresses tighter, the laugh louder, all part of the performance. She was a woman who needed an audience, and I was no longer playing the role she assigned me. I didn't yell, didn't break a dish or toss a drink like some reality show idiot. I just dabbed the corners of my mouth with the cloth napkin, stood up, and said, "We'll see." Her grin faltered for half a breath. That half breath was all I needed. I left the restaurant calmly, like a man who forgot something in the car. Only this time, I wasn't coming back. Now listen, most of you reading this already know the feeling. You work, you provide, you stay faithful. You pay the bills. You keep your damn promises. And somehow, that becomes boring, predictable, unsexy, until the same woman who once clutched your arm in public is now calling you not man enough in front of strangers over duck confit. And if you've gotten even a bit of satisfaction from reading stories like this, where guys like us stop being doormats and start being strategic, then consider subscribing. Over 98% of folks never hit that button, and it tells our team these stories matter. It keeps us going. Anyway, the thing is, that dinner wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the conclusion of a very long prelude. A prelude she never noticed, because she was too busy basking in her own echo chamber of petty superiority. But me? I'd been noticing everything. The whisper-laugh phone calls she took in the guest room. The way her shopping bags started coming from higher-end boutiques, even though I hadn't seen a raise in years. And the kicker? Her sudden interest in privacy on our shared iPad. So no, I didn't just leave on a whim. I'd been quietly preparing for that walkout for months. Maybe longer. It started with small things. Unlinking my accounts from joint email. Rerouting paychecks to a private bank. Creating digital backups of every document with my name or hers on it. She thought I was losing my edge. I was sharpening it. That night, after I left the restaurant, I didn't go to a bar or a hotel. I drove home, parked 3 houses down so she wouldn't hear the garage, and walked into my own house like a thief. Except I wasn't stealing. I was reclaiming. She wasn't home yet. Of course she wasn't. She'd be sipping after-dinner cocktails, basking in the attention of the table, probably relishing how she put her man in his place. Cute. Real cute. Upstairs, I opened my office. The one room in the house she never bothered with unless she needed my signature on something she didn't read. My laptop came with me. Passport, birth certificate, life insurance docs. All went into the slim fireproof bag I'd hidden behind the HVAC panel. A second duffel was already packed in the trunk of my car. I left her one thing. An envelope, unsealed, sitting neatly in her underwear drawer beneath the velvet-lined tray she kept her jewelry in. Just a plain white envelope. No angry note. Just the word, tomorrow. Because tomorrow, Marla's world would start collapsing. Not in an explosion, but in a methodical, choking collapse. Like a building whose beams had been quietly loosened one at a time. She said I wasn't man enough to leave. She had no idea who she was talking to. The thing about being in finance for 34 years is you learn the value of preparation. Not just with numbers, with people, too. Especially the ones who smile while twisting the knife. I sat down in my office, the glow of the monitor reflecting off the glass of scotch I didn't drink. The spreadsheet was already open. 3 tabs: accounts, liabilities, contingency. Each one color-coded, time-stamped, backed up twice. Her name used to be on everything. Now, it was a series of fading gray cells, like her respect, vanishing line by line. I clicked through each institution like I was checking off chores on a Sunday. Bank of New Haven closed. Mutual fund rolled into solo custody. Joint investment account liquidated. Half went into my Roth, the other half into a trust she'd never know existed. The household credit card, the one she swiped like a wand at every boutique within a 40-mile radius, was still technically active, but pending. I had requested cancellation 2 days ago. Today, I opened the final notice from the issuer. Authorized user privileges removed. Card to be deactivated within 24 hours. That would be tomorrow. The timing couldn't be more poetic. Her plastic throne was already melting. One last step. I navigated to the utilities dashboard. Water, electric, internet, autopay turned off. I scheduled termination notices, all for the same date, a week from now. I wouldn't be there, and neither would the payments. If she wanted the lights on, she could figure out how to earn that. She hadn't worked a day in the past 6 years. I opened the budget sheet and hovered over the auto transfer, the monthly deposit I'd been sending to her shared account. Not that she ever noticed it. Money just appeared, like magic. Swipe, click, spend. That was her religion. No? I changed the value from $3,800 to $0. My finger hovered above enter for a moment. Not out of hesitation. Out of ritual. A silent farewell. A financial funeral. Then I pressed the key. Done. I leaned back in the chair. That familiar ache in my chest, the one I used to mistake for heartburn or shame or some abstract hope that she'd notice what she was doing, it was gone. Not replaced by rage. Not even by satisfaction. Just silence. There's a special kind of grief that comes from realizing someone didn't fail to understand you. They understood you perfectly and just didn't care. That was Marla. She knew who I was. Knew what I valued. She just bet I was too soft, too old, too loyal to ever draw a line. She was about to find out that men like me don't draw lines. We calculate them. This wasn't some vindictive tantrum. This was the quiet unraveling of a contract, emotional and financial. She laughed when she said I wasn't man enough to leave. Laughed like a child taunting a chained dog. She didn't realize the gate had been open for weeks. She just never imagined I'd walk through it. The irony is that she thought control looked like attention, dominance, noise. But real control is what happens when you build a lever long enough and wait. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't arguing. I was just exiting. Elegantly. Cleanly. Without blood, but with receipts. I backed up the folders once more onto a flash drive and slipped it into my blazer pocket. I kept my backup on an encrypted cloud she didn't know existed. Redundancy. That's what years in risk management teach you. Prepare for worst-case scenarios and pray you never need the escape hatch. Only this time, I built it for myself. She was still out that night, probably Instagramming her filet mignon, tagging fake smiles on top of hollow champagne toasts. She had no clue that the life she thought she was running was about to eject her like a bad tenant from a lease she never read. And the beauty of it? I didn't have to say a word. Marla came home at 1:37 a.m., heels in hand, mascara slightly smudged in that way she thought looked effortless, but actually just looked tired. She didn't notice me sitting in the dark den, the glow from the hallway catching her profile as she giggled at something on her phone, probably texting that idiot with the man bun who kept reacting to her thirst traps. She floated past like I was air, which, in fairness, I'd made myself into, quiet, invisible, undisturbed. She went straight up the stairs, dropped her clutch on the landing like a breadcrumb, and staggered into the bedroom. 5 minutes later, I heard her snore, soft at first, then wheezy, with that hiccuped inhale that made me consider buying noise-canceling headphones 3 years ago. That sound used to mean comfort. Now, it just meant opportunity. I waited another 10 minutes. Then I stood up and got to work. First, the hallway closet. The fireproof lockbox slid smoothly into my carry-on, tucked between 2 pairs of socks. It held our passports, the deed to my parents' cabin in Vermont, which she always insisted we sell, Too rustic, too boring, and my old marine dog tags. I paused when I saw them, fingers brushing the cold steel. Funny how something that used to define you can end up gathering dust beneath a pile of her Pilates gear. I moved quietly through the house, the way a man does when he knows its every creak. The third stair from the bottom, skip it. The floorboard near the kitchen island, toe it sideways. I didn't want to wake her, not because I feared confrontation, but because this required surgical precision. My office was next. Door opened silently. IWD 40'd the hinges weeks ago. The laptop, already backed up, slid neatly into my shoulder bag. The drawers clicked shut in succession. Tax returns, insurance forms, prenup copies, all packed. The key to the locked filing cabinet went in my coat pocket. I wiped the mouse and keyboard, not for fingerprints, but out of habit. You don't work 3 decades in financial audits without learning the subtle art of vanishing gracefully. Before I shut the office door for the last time, I turned and looked at the space. Clean, controlled, utilitarian. The way I always kept it. The only room in the house untouched by her ever-shifting aesthetics. No weird, live, laugh, love signs. No lavender candles. No silk throw pillows that served no function other than to be fluffed. I locked the door with the spare key and slid it under the hallway rug. Let her call a locksmith. Finally, I moved to the bedroom. She was sprawled diagonally across the bed, one arm flung over the nightstand, her phone still in her hand, screen dimmed. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I opened the drawer on her side of the bed and gently placed a single white envelope inside. Just a plain thing. No wax seal. No dramatic flourish. The only thing written on the front. Tomorrow. The paper inside. 1 page. Neatly folded. Not angry. Not even cruel. Just clarifying. I watched her for a moment. Not in love. Not in anger. Just with the detached curiosity of someone watching a house they once lived in, now up for sale. She used to be beautiful in the kind of way that made time bend. The soft light at the end of a long day. A drink on the porch. Her laugh that bubbled up when she read something ridiculous. But now, lying there with her hair matted and her fake lashes half detached, she just looked overdressed for a party that was already over. I reached into the drawer one more time and slid the jewelry tray aside. Underneath were receipts from her spa trips, her business lunches, and one from a boutique where she bought a men's tie for someone who wasn't me. That tie turned out to be useful, but more on that later. I didn't wake her. I just walked out the front door at 2:23 a.m., keys in my hand, no jacket, no fanfare. Just the quiet click of freedom. She had no idea the fairy tale had already ended. By the time the sun peeked over the rooftops, I was already sipping burnt motel coffee from a paper cup and reviewing the final checklist on my laptop. Not a Hilton or a Marriott, too traceable, too expensive. Just a no-frills place off Route 23 where no one asked questions if you paid in cash. Which I did. The Wi-Fi was slow, but I didn't need speed. I needed precision. This part wasn't personal. This was logistics. The cold, unflinching sweep of a man closing open circuits. First stop, the bank. I logged in, authenticated with 2-factor, and pulled up the account labeled Joint Household Expenses. Cute name, considering I'd been the only one putting money in it for the past 3 years while she spun it like she was trying to win a prize for speed. I selected Close Account. Confirmed. The prompt warned me this could not be undone. Exactly. Next, I moved on to the 2 credit cards she thought were hers. The first was technically a business card in my name, tied to my consulting LLC, the one she used for emergencies like silk scarves and dog spa appointments. I removed her as an authorized user, confirmed the action, then called the issuer. Yes, I'd like to terminate all linked user accounts and deactivate the associated card ending in 2401. Effective immediately. Would you like to send a notification to the authorized party? No, I said, calm as winter. I'd prefer she finds out organically. The woman on the line gave a polite chuckle. She had no idea. The second card, the heavy one with the gold chip and sky-high limit, was already flagged for cancellation. I just had to pull the trigger. 1 click. Done. From there, I logged into the Helic dashboard, the home equity line of credit she dipped into for what she called renovations, but usually ended up being furniture she'd returned 2 weeks later for something trendier. I didn't just close it. I transferred the available equity into the trust I'd set up 2 months ago and initiated the freeze. Legally airtight. She'd be locked out of everything by lunchtime. Next came utilities again. I updated the settings to switch billing to her name starting Friday. Electricity, water, gas, trash pickup, all the invisible things she never noticed but always expected. The way she expected clean sheets, a working dishwasher, and the driveway plowed after every snowstorm. That was the real trick, wasn't it? She thought the world ran on magic. No, it ran on men like me. Silent men. Boring men. Reliable men. The same men who eventually vanish like smoke and take the structure with them. Final call of the morning was to the insurance broker. Yeah, I'd like to remove a driver from my auto policy, I said. Name's Marla. She'll be taking out her own policy from now on. Are you sure? The broker asked. It may cause a rate increase on her end. I'm okay with that. After I hung up, I took a long look at the spreadsheet. Every account, every asset, every exposure, trimmed, closed, rerouted, buried. Like a financial hitman wiping a target off the grid. Marla was still asleep when I sent the final confirmations. I could picture it, silk sheets, blackout curtains drawn, the faint hangover hum in her temples as she dreamed of brunch and Botox. She had no idea she'd wake up to a life with no handles. She'd try to swipe a card later today and get a beep. Try to log into our joint account and get an error. Maybe she'd think it was fraud. Maybe she'd think it was a glitch. Maybe she'd call customer service and get the polite voice that says, I'm sorry, ma'am, but this account has been terminated by the primary account holder. And she'll sit there, blinking at the screen, clutching her latte, surrounded by her friends, all pretending not to stare while the illusion of her kingdom cracks wide open. And the best part? I didn't have to lift my voice once. I just lifted the pin. Marla walked into the boutique like she owned the building. Not rented, owned. That signature click of her heels, the hair pulled into an effortless-looking updo that actually took 2 products and a curling wand. The mirrored sunglasses worn indoors like she was waiting for paparazzi to leap out from behind the racks. She even gave a little half-smile to the teenage girl folding shirts in the corner, the kind that wasn't quite, hello, but more like you may resume breathing now. I've arrived. Following behind her were Tasha and Elise, her brunch brigade. The ones who laughed on cue, gasped at the right moments, and always asked, and what did Dennis say about that? Like it was some sort of sitcom punchline. Truth was, Dennis hadn't said a damn thing in weeks. And that silence, that infuriating, steady silence, had started to gnaw at her. But she pushed that thought down where the yoga and champagne lived. Today wasn't about him. It was about these new St. Laurents she saw on Instagram, nude patent leather, 4-inch heel, perfect toe box, power shoes, divorce shoes. She strutted to the back display and plucked them like fruit. Size 7, she said to the salesgirl without breaking eye contact. And if you bring anything with a platform sole, I walk. The girl nodded quickly and disappeared. 20 minutes later, Marla was standing at the register with her prize. Tasha was pretending to admire a scarf she'd never buy. Elise was already calculating the likes the outing would get if she tagged the store in her Instagram story. And Marla? She was in her element, running her hand down the glossy box like it was silk. She pulled out her wallet with a flourish. Black card. Gold chip. She handed it over with that same smirk she wore at dinner the night before, the one Dennis would have recognized instantly. The one that meant this is my world, and I build it on your spine. The cashier, a polite young man with a buzz cut and the expression of someone used to rich women with sharp tongues, took the card and inserted it into the terminal. Then, he frowned. Marla noticed. Something wrong. He didn't answer right away. He read the screen again. Then his eyebrows twitched barely, and he opened a drawer behind the counter. I'm sorry, ma'am, he said, pulling out a small pair of silver scissors, but this card's been deactivated. Marla laughed. Actually laughed. You're joking. Run it again. He held it up, glanced at her once, almost apologetically, and snipped it straight down the middle. Then again, crosswise. For neat pieces, dropped into a clear plastic box labeled Security Compliance, CC/FRD. Her laugh cut off like a wire had snapped in her throat. That's not possible, she said, blinking. It's his account. The cashier nodded, lips pursed. Yes, ma'am. and it appears he's no longer authorized you to use it. The boutique went quiet. Elise let out the softest, "Oh, you ever heard?" Tasha looked down into her handbag like she was studying the stitching, and Marla, for the first time in years, had nothing to say. No comeback, no flick of the wrist, no performance, just her hand still hovering where the card used to be. "What about," she started, fumbling for her wallet, pulling out the second card, the backup. Swipe. Declined. She tried again. Declined. A third. Declined. The silence was like a vice, slow and tightening. She looked around like someone might explain this away. Some cosmic glitch, some IT outage, some ridiculous clerical error. But all she saw were eyes. Curious. Pitying. A few amused. Tasha finally muttered, "Do you want us to spot you?" Marla's head snapped toward her, venom flashing behind her panic. No, it's just, Dennis is messing with me. He's being a child." But even as she said it, the words rang hollow. Because somewhere deep in her gut, she knew this wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't a man being petty. This was architecture. This was the work of someone who had been building something silently, precisely, beneath her nose. She left the boutique without the shoes, without the card, without the pride she'd walked in with. And yet, that was just the welcome mat. She hadn't even opened the envelope back home. Not yet. Not until tomorrow. But her today had already started to collapse. Marla slammed the car door so hard it echoed off the neighbor's vinyl siding. Her heels, the ones she had to wear even when angry, stabbed into the driveway with every furious step. She yanked open the front door, didn't even bother with her usual greeting to the dog, which Dennis had taken, by the way, another minor betrayal she hadn't noticed until just now, and stormed straight to the kitchen where she kept the iPad. She unlocked it with her thumb, opened the banking app, and waited. Session expired. She frowned. Hit it again. Please log in. That was new. She tried her usual email and password combo, the one Dennis had set up back when they still finished each other's sentences and actually shared things. Incorrect credentials. She squinted, tapped, forgot password, and waited for the reset link. Nothing came. She refreshed. Checked spam. Nothing. Brows now knitted into a sharp line. She opened the credit card app. This one she was sure of. It logged in, briefly, and then flickered to the login screen again with a bright red banner. Your session has been terminated by the primary account holder. Please contact support. She dropped the iPad on the granite counter like it had insulted her. This is ridiculous, she muttered to herself, jabbing her phone screen with her acrylic thumbnail. She hit Dennis's contact, still saved under D money bag from a more optimistic time. Ring. Voicemail. She hung up. Called again. Ring. Voicemail. Again. Dennis, this isn't funny. You need to call me back right now. Something's wrong with the cards. Fix it, or I swear. She stopped herself, almost laughed. Swear what? That she'd yell louder? She looked around the kitchen. Something felt different. The place didn't smell like him anymore. No hint of his aftershave in the entryway. No shoes by the door. No laptop charging at the dining room outlet. Her chest started to feel tight, like the walls were pressing in. She stormed upstairs, into his office, locked. Seriously? She rattled the knob like that would magically remind the house who she was. The deadbolt didn't care. Neither did Dennis. Next stop, the bedroom. She flung open drawers looking for what? Evidence. Instructions? Anything. That's when she found it. An envelope. Plain, white, resting neatly beneath the velvet tray that held her grandmother's earrings and 3 pieces of jewelry she'd bought herself and told people Dennis had surprised her with. Written on the front, in his handwriting, the blocky, accountant-style scrawl, were 2 words. Tomorrow. Her fingers trembled just slightly as she opened it. Inside, a spreadsheet, printed and stapled. She recognized the formatting, Dennis's signature efficiency. Multiple tabs, accounts closed, liabilities removed, access revoked, and her personal favorite, trust disbursements, confidential. Tucked beneath that were 4 official-looking letters, each stamped and signed. One from the attorney she met once during the prenup discussions, who smiled too politely. One from the bank. One from the brokerage firm. And one from a private investigator she didn't recognize. until she saw the attached photo of herself, blurry but unmistakable, mid-embrace with a man in a parking garage. Her mouth went dry. At the bottom of the stack, on a single sheet of paper, was a typed message. Just one line. You mock my silence. Now it's all you have left. Her hands dropped to her lap. The papers fluttered to the floor like snow. For the first time, she understood. This wasn't about a card. This wasn't about a petty spat or a man throwing a fit. Dennis hadn't left. He'd erased himself from their finances, from the property, from the relationship. She could scream, call, threaten all she wanted. But there was no one to argue with. No door to pound on. He was gone, and he'd planned every second of it. 3 days later, a certified envelope arrived. Hand-delivered. No postage. No return address. Just a firm knock at the door around noon and a man in a dark blazer who didn't bother making eye contact. Mrs. Morton? Yes. He handed her the envelope and walked off before she could ask anything. Not a word. Not a smirk. Just a job done. Marla stood there in the entryway in a silk robe and slippers, staring at the envelope like it might contain anthrax. She took it to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of Pinot at noon like it was 5 p.m., and sat down with the solemnity of someone who started to suspect what's coming but still prays to be wrong. She peeled it open. First page, notice of intent to file for legal separation. Filed under Dennis Morton. Dated the morning after she laughed in his face at dinner. Second page, summary of financial disentanglement. All accounts previously held jointly had been reassigned, closed, or transferred to Dennis's name or trust. Property title had been adjusted accordingly. Her name was missing from every asset. Then came the dagger. Alimony not applicable per Clause 14C of the prenuptial agreement. Subclause invoked. Marital violation, including but not limited to infidelity. Marla froze. She squinted at the line again like the ink might shift into something less damning. Attached behind the letter was an itemized evidentiary summary, all from a private digital forensics firm. She flipped through it with growing nausea. An email to Ty with subject line, "He's out of town. I miss your hands." A photo of a dinner reservation for two made under the name M. Morton at the Hyatt rooftop bar on a Tuesday. Dennis was working a client audit in Des Moines. A string of Facebook messages sent from her burner account, the one she forgot Dennis had once helped her set up when she was avoiding toxic friends. And then the jewel of the collection. A printed message from Ty himself. "He's just funding your lifestyle, babe. I'm the one giving you something to feel." It was dated 6 weeks before Dennis left. Marla slammed the papers onto the marble counter like they might catch fire. Her breath hitched. No tears, not yet. Anger always came first with her. She paced. Called Elise. Got voicemail. Tried Tasha. Straight to voicemail too. What the hell? It was like someone had put her on mute. Then her phone buzzed with a new email. From Dennis's lawyer. Digital copy attached for your records. You are advised to retain legal counsel before making any further financial activity under jointly held credit. She hurled the phone across the couch, knocking over a candle that splashed lavender wax onto the upholstery. She didn't notice. The thing that broke her wasn't even the paperwork. It was the realization that Dennis hadn't just found out. He had known. For months. And worse, he had stayed quiet. He let her walk around like a queen in a paper palace while he unthreaded the foundation brick by brick, waiting for the whole thing to collapse under its own weight. She tried to compose a message to him, fingers trembling. "You vindictive bastard." Then deleted it. She tried another. "Can we just talk?" Deleted that, too. There was no tone she could strike that wouldn't expose how cornered she was. Because this wasn't some break or rough patch. This was legal. This was final. And it had teeth. Marla had always believed she could manipulate her way out of anything. Cry a little. Threaten a little. Flirt a little. But Dennis hadn't just walked away. He'd weaponized everything she underestimated. By Saturday, Marla had convinced herself there was still a card left to play. Dennis was being dramatic. Calculated, yes, but still just a man. And men were emotional creatures, especially when wounded. He'd overreacted, lawyered up, pulled the rug out to feel powerful. Fine. But he wasn't cold. Not like Ty. Ty was heat. Ty was danger. Ty was the text at 11:37 p.m. saying, "Wish you were here instead." Ty was the hand on her thigh during lunch at that overpriced sushi place where Dennis once took her for their 5th anniversary. Ty would answer. He always did. She dialed. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. She tried again. Same thing. Her voice cracked slightly on the 3rd attempt. Ty? Hey, it's me. Something's happened. Dennis, he left. It's complicated. Can we talk? Nothing. She texted. Can I come over? Need you. Read. No reply. She waited 5 minutes, then another 10. Then typed again, slower this time. I'm serious. This is bad. Please don't leave me hanging. No dots. No typing bubble. Nothing. Her fingers were clenched so tight around the phone she nearly dropped it when it buzzed 15 minutes later. Heart in her throat. She looked. Not from Ty. Just a spam ad for skin cream. She stood up too fast and nearly knocked over the wine glass she'd just poured, the 3rd one. The world spun slightly. She sat back down, dialing again. This time, the call didn't even ring. Blocked. She stared at the screen, willing it to be a mistake. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he switched carriers. Maybe. No. Marla was many things. Delusional, maybe, self-absorbed, definitely. But stupid wasn't one of them. She opened their chat thread. Gone. Just like that. Deleted. Like she never existed in his life. Like the hotel rooms, the whispered meetups, the gifts, the stupid engraved cufflinks she bought him using Dennis's card, were all part of a temporary script. A role she played. A role he'd replaced. She opened his Instagram. Private. Profile picture changed. No mutuals. She called Elise, then Tasha again. Still voicemail. She opened a bottle of vodka this time. Something stronger than Pinot. Her robe had a red stain on it from when she flailed earlier and knocked a glass into the counter. She didn't change. She sat on the kitchen floor, back against the dishwasher, knees drawn up, clutching her phone like a lifeline. The screen dimmed, then locked. This couldn't be happening. Ty was supposed to be the future. She'd tolerated Dennis's dullness, his damn budgeting apps, his silent mornings for years because of Ty. Because he was exciting, wild, rebellious. And he made her feel wanted. Not seen, mind you wanted. Like an object you lean toward, use, and dispose of. Only now she realized. Ty hadn't wanted her. He'd wanted the perks of proximity. The nice restaurants she picked up. The perfume Dennis bought. The weekend getaway business trips she funded and Ty enjoyed. Ty didn't block her. He blocked the cash flow. And now, with Dennis gone and the money cut off, she wasn't valuable anymore. Not to Ty. Not to her friends who'd mysteriously stopped answering calls. Not even to herself, if she were being honest. The phone buzzed one more time. Email. Subject. Notice of access revocation, company card. Apparently, her employer had flagged her charges after Dennis's documentation exposed non-work-related activity. A second investigation was under review. She laughed. It was a sharp, bitter sound that bounced off the tiled walls. Then she cried. Alone. With no man. No money. And no more exits. It was raining. Not the poetic kind of rain you read about in novels, but a spiteful, bone-chilling drizzle that made everything feel grayer than it already was. The kind of weather that ruins makeup and makes bad decisions seem a little more romantic. Marla stood outside the nondescript brick building with its chipped paint and buzzing porch light, soaked to her knees, mascara bleeding into the corners of her eyes. She tried to fix her hair in the car mirror, but the humidity had declared war on her curls. She buzzed the intercom. Nothing. She buzzed again, holding the button longer this time. Still nothing. Then, just as she was about to press it a 3rd time, she heard the faint click of a door unlocking from within, followed by the soft creak of the interior door opening. Not all the way. Just enough. There was a chain still on. Dennis? She called, voice cracking like old wood. A shadow moved behind the door. She could smell his aftershave, the same one she used to mock for being too old-fashioned, now suddenly grounding, comforting, real. Please, she said, stepping closer. Can we just talk? Just for a minute. I didn't come here to fight. No answer. Dennis, I get it. You're hurt. I made mistakes. I said things. But we were married, for God's sake. Doesn't that mean something to you? He didn't respond. But there was movement, deliberate. She heard a soft scrape on the inside. Then, Through the narrow crack in the doorway, a small folded paper was passed out. Not handed. Passed. Like a document slid to a prisoner. She blinked at it, hesitated, then took it. Before she could say anything else, the door shut. Gently. Not slammed. Not angry. Just closed. And the lock clicked into place like the lid of a casket. Marla unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. Rain smudged the ink as she read. You said I wasn't man enough. Turns out, I was too much man for you to respect. No signature. She stared at the page, the words blurring as her eyes welled up. Her first instinct was rage. He had planned this. Scripted it. Like she was nothing more than an audience member in his silent revenge opera. But then, that collapsed into something colder. More honest. She wasn't the one who had been underestimated. He was. She'd built a life on the assumption that Dennis would always be there. Quiet, loyal, reliable. A financial four-drip she could unplug and replug whenever it suited her emotional theater. And when she smirked across that dinner table and mocked his manhood, she hadn't realized she was detonating the last bridge she had left. Marla sat down on the damp concrete, her designer coat soaking through instantly. She didn't care. She didn't even wipe the mascara. She just sat there, holding the note in one hand and her car keys in the other, like she couldn't decide which one she wanted to throw further. Neighbors passed by, glancing, whispering. A delivery guy stepped over her legs with a paper bag and a muttered damn. She didn't move, because it wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the moment she realized the person she'd taken for granted, the man she thought was too dull to hurt her, had done the one thing she never believed he could. He stopped loving her. And worse, he did it without saying a word. 3 weeks later, Marla sat in a dull gray office chair at the end of the hallway where the HR manager told her to wait. She'd shown up with a fake calm, dressed carefully in her professional but am still hot outfit, the one that usually earned her compliments or, at the very least, deference. Today, no one looked twice. Her company badge had stopped working that morning. She'd smiled at the security guard, tried to play it off like, oh, you know tech. But he didn't even pretend to laugh. He just checked the list, paused, and asked her to follow him to the waiting area near the glass conference room. That's where she saw it, the manila folder on the desk with her name written in all caps. The top of the stack was a copy of her corporate card transactions. Spa visits, a weekend at a resort she swore was for client networking, dinners that had nothing to do with business, unless the business was pretending she still mattered. The internal audit had started quietly. Dennis had made sure of that. The documentation he submitted, anonymized, redacted where necessary, but pointed like a scalpel, included receipts, timestamps, screenshots, enough to raise questions from people who normally didn't ask any. When they froze her card, she tried to get ahead of it. Applied for a new personal credit line that night, banking on her good standing. Declined. She tried a second card. Declined. She finally called the bank in desperation. There must be a mistake, she said, pacing her condo barefoot in her robe at 2 a.m. There wasn't. Her credit had been buoyed for years by Dennis's consistency, by the invisible financial scaffolding he built, and she lived on like a decorative gargoyle. Without it, the system recalibrated, and it did not like what it saw. One by one, things unraveled. Her social circle shrank overnight. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who'd been quietly separated, whose name now floated around in company Slack channels like an HR cautionary tale. Even Tasha and Elise stopped replying to her texts. The boutique girls, the same ones who once complimented her bag, held doors for her, smiled too wide, now offered tight-lipped nods. One even avoided eye contact entirely. It wasn't scandal. It was worse. It was the slow rot of irrelevance. She came home that evening and poured herself a drink. No music, no TV, just silence. She stared out at the skyline through the condo window Dennis had once insisted was too overpriced for the view. He'd been right about that, too. Then her laptop pinged. Email. Sender, D. Morton. Subject. No subject. No attachments. Just a single sentence. You gambled on weakness. I just stopped playing. Her breath caught. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't loud. It didn't gloat. It simply stated what she now had no way to argue against. He never needed to hurt her. just to remove himself. Remove the support, the presence, the tolerance, and let gravity do the rest. She closed the laptop. This was it. Not a dramatic collapse, not a scandal splashed across the news. Just a woman, alone, in a condo she couldn't afford, surrounded by handbags she couldn't sell fast enough, staring at a glass of wine she no longer had the appetite to drink. And the sound she heard wasn't an explosion. It was silence. The same silence she once mocked. Now, it was the only thing left.